Chapter 2155. The sky gradually darkened. Fairyland was brightly lit. Every skyscraper had its lights turned on, illuminating every corner of the city. Cars came and went. Pedestrians came and went. Even at night, the prosperity of the entire fairyland could still be glimpsed from the phenomenon brimming with life, preventing even the chilly night winds from blowing away the warmth of the city. Here, the most common people were children. Moreover, they were children of all ages. Some of these children were laughing like normal people, while some could not control the ability in their body, causing their pupils to show a scarlet color, but they were still laughing. It was believed that such a scene could only be seen in this incredible fairyland. And in this inconceivable fairyland, the most common saying was that, "When my ability is fully awakened, I'll join the fairy tale guild and become a starter." Almost all the children who could speak had said this before. This was because to these children, a guild named Fairy Tale was no different from a holy land. Every child hoped that they could join the Fairy Tale Guild. Every child hoped that they could become a starter. As time passed, joining the Fairy Tale Guild became the dream of all the cursed children. Therefore, every child in Fairyland would look in one direction almost every day when they were free, with longing and yearning in their eyes. In that direction, there was the tallest skyscraper in the world. The Fairy Tale Guild was based in that skyscraper. Of course, these children did not know. At this moment, the interior of the skyscraper had long been in chaos. The skyscrapers belonging to Fairy Tale were generally open during the day, and the night was their rest time. Of course, at this time, in the Fairy Tale headquarters building, the bustling scene during the day had subsided. However, around the skyscraper in the center of Fairyland, pairs of police officers rushed over and gathered in the first-floor office hall of Fairy Tale. Not long after, the spacious office hall was filled with people, appearing especially lively and noisy. What the hell is going on? I don't know, but it must be something big. I was just about to shower and sleep when the guild called and told me to gather here. I almost forgot to put on my pants. I received the call too. Me too. Seems like everyone. In the office hall, many of the facilitators were discussing. And while the facilitators were discussing, so were the starters. There was an emergency gathering like this last time, right? But there were no facilitators that time, only us starters. Then the guild issued that thing. What's it called again? Artificial Divine Artifact. Yes, Artificial Divine Artifact. And only the starters of the S-Class and A-Class police teams have it, right? Then they went to wipe out the protozoa. Could it be this time as well? It would be great if that were the case. I heard that the artifact was developed by the president to increase our strength. Really? It can increase in ability? And it was developed by the guild leader. What should we do? I want it so much. That's right. The starters were all in an uproar, causing the whole place to become noisy and lively. Until a certain moment, in the office hall, the sound of the broadcast began to sound. Everyone, please be quiet. Hearing this voice, all the police officers shut their mouths, causing the extremely lively hall a second ago to suddenly become silent. After 3 years of development, the police officers belonging to the Fairy Tale Guild were similar to the Magic Guide Guild. Not only were the management methods very similar, but even the way they acted was also very similar. Usually, they had a high degree of freedom, but when there was an emergency, their cohesion was stronger than anyone else's. This was a guild. Just like the community in the box court, under the same flag, they were a group. All of them were classmates and family. Under such circumstances, the broadcast began again. According to the advisor of the guild leader of Longevity Summer, we are now transmitting the order to gather. 10 pairs of S-Class police officers. 30 pairs of A-Class police officers. 50 pairs of B-Class police officers. 100 pairs of C-Class police officers. 300 pairs of D-Class police officers. 500 pairs of E-Class police officers. A total of 990 pairs of police officers. Immediately head to the Tokyo area. The content from the broadcast surprised all the police officers present. What's going on? Why are so many police officers suddenly gathered? And they're heading to the Tokyo area? Could it be that something happened in the Tokyo area? The pairs of police officers all began to talk about it. In the past, the guild had issued many summons, but never on such a large scale. Moreover, the level of the police officers gathered was shocking. Level S was the top 300 IP rankings. Level A was the top 1000 IP rankings. Level B was the top 3000 IP rankings. Level C was the top 5000 IP rankings. Level D was the top 10,000 IP rankings. Level E was the top 10,000 IP rankings. In other words, this time there were 40 police officers in the top 1000 IP rankings. Among them, there were even 10 teams of S-class police officers in the top 300 IP rankings. This level of strength was enough to attack a small country. While the group of police officers were talking about it, the broadcast sounded again. Based on the judgment of the higher-ups of the situation, the police forces sent this time must be partners with the top IP rankings under the circumstances of the number and level of police officers sent. Therefore, within the number of teams sent, the members with the top IP rankings of the same level will carry out this mission. 10 pairs of S-class police officers will be occupied by the top 10 pairs of S-class police officers in the guild. 30 pairs of A-class police officers will be occupied by the top 30 pairs of A-class police officers in the guild. And so on, the police officers with the top IP rankings of each level, and within the number of teams mentioned, will participate in this mission and head to the Tokyo area. Execution time is immediate. After the broadcast ends, all police teams who received the notice should rush to the airport and be picked up by the guild's special plane. With that said, the voice in the broadcast began to show emotion for the first time. The above orders are personally issued by President Noah. All members must not delay. I repeat. Hearing the last sentence of the broadcast, the police officers who were in a heated discussion all stopped talking and opened their eyes wide. What did they just say? What did the broadcast say just now? President Noah personally issued the order? All the police officers looked at each other. Then all kinds of emotions appeared in the eyes of the promoters and initiators. President. The president personally issued the order. In other words, we can finally see the president. That's great. At this moment, almost all the police officers cheered. Although there were all kinds of emotions in everyone's heart, there was definitely one that was missing. Joy. Because to fairy tale, Noah was simply a legend. This sentence was not an exaggeration at all. Powerful. Mysterious. This was the image of Noah in the hearts of everyone in fairy tale. I've long heard that the president came back not long ago and even showed his skills at the international conference, making the representatives of those countries feel dejected. Now the president has personally issued the order to gather in the Tokyo area. Coupled with the scale of this order, there must be a big operation. Is it to annihilate a country? Is it to annihilate a second Mozambique? Or is it to show who the boss is? The guild members were somewhat excited, and the corners of their mouths twitched. Then at a certain moment they reached a consensus. Let's go. Let's go. Head to the Tokyo area. The people who received the notice all began to rush to the airport aggressively. Chapter 2156. Tokyo Area, Hotel. In a room that was not too luxurious, Noah had just finished washing up and putting on his clothes. After playing around with Aster, Athena, Orpheus and Lilith for a while, he received a call. When he picked up the call, Muging's voice came from the other side. President, everyone is here. It's time for you to make an appearance, right? Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows. Everyone is here already. Noah gave the order last night. Right now, the sun had just risen, and all the people who had been gathered had already arrived. There are a total of 100 military helicopters for direct transport. How long do you think it will take? Mugging said. So hurry up and come. Got it. Noah smiled. I'll be right there. The police were divided into two groups, the promoter and the initiator. If there were 990 pairs of police officers, then there would be close to 2,000 people. At this moment, 2,000 police officers were neatly lined up in a vast square, looking forward. There was a high platform in front of them. On the platform, Mugging and Rintaro were standing. Even Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yinju were there. Mugging was the acting president of Fairy Tale. Rintaro was the leader of Fairy Tale's tour group. In other words, both of them were high-ranking members of Fairy Tale, and both of them had rendered meritorious service. As for Tina, Xiashi, and Yanzhu, their positions in Fairy Tale weren't low either. Hina was the initiator of Fairy Tale's president, and she was also the strongest person in the IP ranking. Xiashi was the initiator of Fairy Tale's acting president, and he was also the president's consultant. Yanzhu was the initiator of Fairy Tale's tour group leader, and her IP ranking was also in the top 10. Of course, everyone was qualified to be on the platform. However, in the middle of Muging's group, the seat was empty. There was only one flag fluttering in the wind. On the flag, there was the guild emblem Fairy Tale. Everyone silently gazed at the flag that represented their guilds. Although the expressions on their faces were different, a solemn atmosphere pervaded the air. No one said a word. No one left the formation. The members of the guild, who had originally enjoyed a high degree of freedom, were now like the most orderly army, quietly lining up. Even the younger initiators weren't fooling around. Instead, their youthful faces were filled with seriousness. In a building next to the square, Elysium and Weiji were both here. Elysium looked through the window at the neatly lined-up police officers. Elysium with admiration and admiration. Is this the police of Fairy Tale? The reason why Sheng Tianzi said this was not because this was the first time he had seen Fairy Tale. In the past, Elysium had seen a lot of Fairy Tale's police officers. However, seeing Fairy Tale's police officers in this way gave Elysium a different feeling. What were police officers? In the eyes of many people, they were just a group of criminals who could carry weapons with them. Even in a police company, police officers were only employed as employees, not as lackeys of the company. Therefore, most of the police officers did what they wanted and were extremely unscrupulous. At least it was like this in the past. Compared to those police companies, the police officers belonging to Fairy Tale's guild also had a lot of freedom. However, the quality of the police officers that joined Fairy Tale was higher than the police and soldiers. They were so orderly that it was as if one order could make everyone risk their lives for him. Elysium could not help but sigh. Of course, what made Elysium sigh was the quality of the police officers. A lot of them are famous people. Elysium murmured. Is this the power of a force that can seize the world's hegemony? It's just a part of it. Looking at the pairs of police officers in the square below, Weiji unfolded the iron fan in her hand and covered the lower half of her face, so that no one could see her expression. According to the Sima family's statistics of Fairyland's police force, the large force below probably doesn't even account for half of Fairy Tale's power, right? Hearing that, Elysium could not help but recall the initiator team that Noah deployed during Fairyland's annihilation operation at the last international conference. That team was able to easily conquer one of the 3 demon realms, which was known as one of the 3 demon realms. It was called an operation that saved the world. At that time, more than half of the initiators belonging to Fairy Tale's top 1,000 were mobilized. And now, among the police officers lined up below, there were only 10 pairs of S-class police officers ranked in the top 300, and only 30 A-class police officers ranked in the top 1,000. Compared to the 600 initiators who were ranked in the top 1,000 at that time, the quality was undoubtedly not that great. Probably considering that Fairyland also needs someone to defend it, that's why they only deployed this level of force? Weiji glanced at Mu Gung, who was standing on the platform, her tone more or less displeased. Undoubtedly he's a pauper. I really don't know why he would be so considerate. Obviously, Wei Weaver had guessed that the quality and quantity were sent by Mu Gung after careful consideration. From now on, the cursed children will all be sent to Fairyland. In other words, the initiators will become a force unique to Fairyland, and all police officers will naturally be monopolized by Fairyland, Weiji said with a half-smile. So this might be the last time we see so many police officers gathered in the Tokyo area. Lord Elysium, you must remember this scene well, okay? Elysium nodded, and his gaze turned to look at the platform. To be more precise, he was looking at the position of the Fairy Tale flag. Looking at the flag fluttering in the wind, Elysium could not help but smile. As expected of the guild that man single-handedly founded, Just as Elysium's voice trailed off, the atmosphere in the privet square suddenly changed. Whoosh! Amidst the clear sound of something breaking through the air, a stream of light suddenly burst from the other side of the sky, like a flash of light, piercing through the sky and landing directly in the direction of the privet square. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, the flash of light from the sky was like a bolt of lightning, landing in front of the flag on the platform, setting off waves of air that spread in all directions. Everyone was shocked, and quickly raised their hands to block in front of them. On the platform, Mugung, Rintaro, Hina, Yenju, and Xiaoshi were also shocked, and raised their hands to block in front of them, resisting the expanding air wave. Whoosh! The whistling wind blew past the high platform, the square, and the surrounding buildings. Elysian Sun and Unweaver were both surprised to see this. After an unknown amount of time, the whistling wind finally stopped. Only then did everyone present raise their heads and look in the direction of the high platform with a fearful expression on their faces. The next moment, everyone was stunned, because at the place where the stream of light fell, where the wind burst out, a person appeared out of nowhere. Fairy Tail. Reaching out, he gently stroked the flag fluttering in the wind. Looking at the coat of arms on the flag, Noah's heart was filled with an incredible calmness. For Noah, this was the symbol of home. No matter which world he was in, it was the same. After stroking the flag fluttering in the wind, Noah turned around. The faces of all the police officers present turned red. Oh! Cheers resounded through the sky. Chapter 2157. Oha! The police officers belonging to Fairy Tail were all cheering loudly, venting their excitement. It couldn't be helped. The way Noah appeared was too shocking for these police officers who had always regarded him as a legend. That kind of appearance was either not done by humans or could only be called magic. Therefore, the pairs of police officers felt unusually excited and couldn't help but cheer loudly. Under such circumstances, Tina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju also seemed to have been affected by this as they raised their hands high into the air and cheered loudly. Mugging and Rintaro looked at each other and smiled helplessly. You did it on purpose, right? It's definitely intentional. Both Mugging and Rintaro could tell that Noah was trying to boost morale. If the Fairy Tail police officers were to carry out their mission in high spirits, they would probably get twice the result with half the effort, right? Even Elysium and Unwoven, who were watching this scene from the building, saw it. After a moment of shock, they smiled. Really, he's always full of surprises. As expected of the man I've taken a fancy to. Little Noah, you're really something. Although I didn't know how Noah did it, he was an existence that was able to defeat even the Zodiac Stage V and the Protozoa army in one blow. No matter how inconceivable it would seem natural, right? Before Noah displayed a power that was different from this world. This sense of mystery would always attract others, reassuring their companions and making their enemies fearful. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why Noah had never revealed his power to the public in this world. Those who didn't know much about it could only feel admiration or fear. Only a fool like Zhuo Wei would feel disdain for it, right? On the high platform, Noah, whose back was facing the Fairy Tail flag, looked down at his guild members who were cheering loudly. A hint of satisfaction flashed across his deep, dark eyes. Then he slowly raised his hand. The group of cheering police officers immediately stopped talking, letting the cheers come and go as quickly as they came. Silence returned to the privet square. However, every member of Fairy Tail still looked at Noah with eyes full of excitement, telling Noah how high their spirits were. Under everyone's excited and yearning gazes, Noah spoke softly. His voice spread out in an unbelievable manner, echoing in the air above the entire soldier square. I believe that many of you here are seeing me for the first time, right? Many people nodded their heads repeatedly. 3 years ago, the guild called Fairy Tail was just a civilian organization in the Tokyo area. Although because of Noah's management, this non-governmental organization is the largest force in the Tokyo area, but that is only relative to the Tokyo area. Now 3 years had passed. In these 3 years, it wasn't as if no one had left Fairy Tail. However, compared to the people who left, there were undoubtedly more people who joined. Otherwise, Fairyland would not be unprecedentedly prosperous and be known as the world's strongest independent country, where world hegemony was within reach. Of course, even if there were no people who had stayed 3 years ago under Noah's leadership until now, compared to the unprecedentedly grand fairy tale, the number was shockingly small. In addition, the police force that was deployed was only a small part of fairy tale's strength, so naturally, there were very few old members who had seen Noah before. However, for everyone, Noah was just a mystery, and they were not unfamiliar with him. Because in the guild, everyone had heard of Noah's deeds along the way. So, I won't introduce myself or anything like that. Noah said as if he saw through everyone's thoughts. This time, I've gathered everyone in the Tokyo area mainly for 2 things. The first thing, I'm sure everyone has heard about it from the news and such, is the problem of the political power in the Tokyo area being paralyzed. Noah looked down at the people below with disdain. Due to the infiltration and attacks of terrorists, the Tokyo area is currently facing an awkward situation where there is no military power that can be used. If this continues, the Tokyo area may fall into panic and chaos, and the consequences are unimaginable. The Tokyo area is the only ally of Fairyland. Since our ally has such a problem, we should provide some help. Noah's voice entered everyone's ears. Therefore, the first thing is, until the military power in the Tokyo area is restored, we Fairy Tale will be responsible for the police and soldiers, and help the Tokyo area to maintain the order of the entire Tokyo area. Hearing this, everyone finally understood. So, it was because of this that so many police officers were deployed to the Tokyo area? Of course, this is a voluntary job. There is no pay, no reward, and it is likely to be a bit difficult. Noah said to everyone. If you are unwilling to carry out this mission, you can raise your hand now. If you don't raise your hand, then you are not allowed to quit halfway. As soon as his voice fell, the audience was silent. No one raised their hand. Everyone looked at Noah with a smile, and expressed their inner thoughts. In this regard, Noah also smiled slightly and nodded. As for how to carry out this mission, the acting president of Tiantong and President Chisho will arrange it. When the time comes, everyone will act according to the instructions. At this point, Noah's tone suddenly turned indifferent. In addition to this mission, I will give you a second mission. Noah's sudden change in tone stunned the police officers of Fairy Tale. In the next second, Noah's words made everyone's expression change slightly. Wuxiang Association. Noah narrowed his eyes. This name, everyone should be familiar with it. Everyone widened their eyes, and then a touch of hatred flashed across their eyes. For the general public, the existence of a terrorist organization naturally would not be spread. However, for the police officers of Fairy Tale, they had long heard of this name. After all, in the past year, the police of Fairy Tale who went to all over the world to carry out missions were repeatedly targeted by Wuxiang Association, causing a lot of casualties. In this way, how could the police of Fairy Tale not know about this mysterious organization? According to the information obtained, one of the top operatives and some of the operatives belonging to Wuxiang Association are now in the Tokyo area. Noah said indifferently, I am not going to let them go. Her words made all the members of Fairy Tale's blood boil with excitement. During this period of time, you need to maintain order in the Tokyo area, and you need to find these people of Wuxiang Association. Noah said word by word. No matter what method is used, don't even let go of the peripheral area, do a carpet search, it's best if you can find their base. If you find their base, then immediately report it. Noah raised the corner of his mouth. Let us wipe them all out. Hearing this sentence, the police of Fairy Tale all laughed. Yes. In the next moment, a chorus of responses resounded through the entire private square. Although it was a bit different, should it be said that they were worthy of being the people of Fairy Tale? Thinking back to their comrades who were injured or even killed by the Five Xiang Association in the past, the hearts of the police officers were burning with fighting spirit. Even if it was for the sake of their comrades, they must not let Wuxiang Association go. This was the voice of everyone. Chapter 2158. Under the arrangement of Mugging and Xia Shi, the police officers belonging to Fairy Tale were assigned to various corners and departments in the Tokyo area to carry out missions. The police officers belonging to Fairy Tale were no strangers to the police and soldier missions. This was because when Fairyland was first established, the order and laws of the entire Fairyland were maintained by the police officers of Fairy Tale. It was not until later that Fairyland began to accept missions from all over the world and needed manpower that Mugging began to create a specialized police force. In addition, there were missions from all over the world. The higher the level of the police under Fairy Tale, the more missions they would have to go through, and the more experience they would have. There was no need for any adaptation time, and the police were all perfectly immersed in the missions. In view of this, the residents of the Tokyo area were somewhat surprised to find that the number of police officers they saw every day had increased. After all, ever since Fairy Tale wantonly transferred the cursed children from other places into Fairyland, the number of police officers from all over the world had plummeted. It was not until a year ago that it was discovered, which alarmed the higher-ups of all countries. However, it was too late to control the loss of the cursed children at this time. Therefore, the number of police officers from all over the world had dropped a lot, especially in the Tokyo area. After all, the Tokyo area was the closest to Fairyland, and was also an ally of Fairyland. Not only did they not control the loss of the cursed children, but they also took the initiative to send the cursed children to Fairyland. Therefore, as early as 1 or 2 years ago, there were not many police officers in the Tokyo area. Only when the Holy Sun issued a commission to Fairyland would Fairyland send police officers to the Tokyo area to carry out missions. Today, a total of nearly 2,000 police officers, and nearly 1,000 police officers pairs poured into the Tokyo area to participate in the work of the Metropolitan Police Department and the self-defense forces in the Tokyo area. Naturally, many people were surprised to find that the number of police officers had increased. However, the first thing that the police officers belonging to Fairy Tale requested to accept was patrol work. As a result, there were traces of police officers everywhere on the streets, which frequently attracted the attention of the residents of the Tokyo area. As for why the first thing that the police officers of Fairy Tale requested to accept was patrol work, the reason was simple. It was to carry out the second task that Noah had given him, to find traces of the Wuxiang Association. Therefore, a large number of police officers patrolled the various areas of the Tokyo area almost every day, using their long-term work experience to search for traces of the target. Even the outer Zhou district was not spared. Of course, there was no need to patrol the outer perimeter. However, a portion of the police who had entered the self-defense forces work system, known as Fairy Tale, would often wander around the periphery looking for traces of Wuxiang Association. In other words, the blanket search that Noah had mentioned was being carried out perfectly by the police officers of Fairy Tale. During this process, an unexpected piece of news was spread. I heard that the president of the Osaka region, Chi Wu, was assassinated in a room of an international hotel. Really? Of course it's true. The ruler of Osaka actually died in Tokyo? This time Tokyo is in big trouble. A foreign ruler died in Tokyo. This matter caused an uproar in the entire Tokyo area for a while. For this reason, the rulers of the Osaka region were furious, and they all questioned the Tokyo area, asking for justice. This was not a joke. It was possible for the two countries to enter a state of war if things didn't go well. However, in this regard, the emperor not only did not express his condolences with a peace-loving attitude like before, but he also announced a piece of news. The president of the Osaka region, Chi Wu, harbored evil intentions against Fairyland, which carries the hope of all mankind, and attempted to murder the president of Fairyland. He has now been personally executed by the president of Fairyland, President Noah. If the Osaka region has any objections to this matter, you can report it to Fairyland. In one sentence, the entire upper echelons of the Osaka region completely lost their temper. Report? How to report? Now the people of the world had placed their hopes on Fairyland and stood behind Fairyland. In the hope of being saved, which country's people would advocate condemning Fairyland? Not to mention, Chi Wu Shangshuan was originally a dictator, and imposed heavy taxes in the Osaka region, which had already caused the anger of all the people in the Osaka region. In addition, the upper echelons of the Osaka region were actually coveting the position of the ruler of the Osaka region. Questioning Tokyo was just a superficial attitude. Now that Tokyo gave an explanation, And it was such an irrefutable explanation. The upper echelons of the Osaka region were of course happy to accept it, and began to compete for the position of the ruler. Unfortunately, since Qi Shangshuan had been the ruler of the Osaka region for so many years, and he himself was the top cadre of the Wuxiang Association, how could he not have arranged for the Wuxiang Association people to lurk in the Osaka region? Not to mention lurking, most of the senior officials in the Osaka region were replaced by the cadre of the Wuxiang Association, arranged by Qi Shangshuan over the years, almost making the Wuxiang Association the ruler of the entire Osaka region. Under such circumstances, the Osaka region was completely chaotic. The upper echelons who did not know the existence of the Wuxiang Association wanted to compete for the position of the ruler. The upper echelons of the Wuxiang Association also wanted to compete for the position of the ruler. Coupled with some neutral parties who sincerely wanted to let the people of the Osaka region live a happy life, the upper echelons of the Osaka region were suddenly divided into 3 factions, fighting with each other. After learning about this matter, Noah directly gave another order to Mugging and Xiashi. Send another police force to the Osaka area. Nominally, it's the same as the Tokyo area, but it's also to maintain order. Then secretly investigate the entire Osaka area's high officials, and dig out all the 5 Xiang Association people. This order made Mugging and Xiashi stunned for a while. And at the same time, they also looked at each other. It's over, Noah is really serious. It seems that the president's tolerance of the Wuxiang Association has reached the limit. It really has reached the limit. Before, when Mugging was attacked, Noah did not know the existence of the Wuxiang Association, and did not know that they had already targeted the Fairy Tale Guild. Therefore, Noah let Li Qingyin and bodyguard Zhuo escape. But now, knowing everything that the Wuxiang Association did, and that even Qiwu Zhongshuan was one of the top operatives of the Wuxiang Association, Noah really did not intend to let the Wuxiang Association go. Therefore, Noah made a prompt decision to be serious, and let the entire fairy tale take action. The top operatives of the Wuxiang Association are stirring up trouble in the Tokyo and Osaka regions, and the upper echelons of the other 3 regions may have also been infiltrated by the Wuxiang Association. Let the police in the guild take action, except for half of them stationed in Fairyland. The rest are sent to the 5 major regions of Japan, and completely uproot the Wuxiang Association. This was Noah's order. Half of the people were stationed in Fairyland, and the rest were sent to various countries in the 5 major regions of Japan, to give a fatal blow to the Wuxiang Association. If it was before the release of the artificial artifact, sending so many people, it was really hard to say whether they could complete the mission and protect their hometown at the same time. But now, with the release of the artificial artifact, the initiators of the top 1000 IP in the fairy tale have all become absolute powerhouses who have reached the domain, so they naturally have more power to spare. Not to mention, in fairy tale, there were also many leader-type characters. Therefore, Noah can rest assured that the Wuxiang Association in the other regions will be annihilated by the capable members of the guild. With such a big operation going on, a month's time passed in the blink of an eye. A piece of news was finally reported to Noah. Found the Wuxiang Association base. Chapter 2159. Tokyo area, outer peripheral area, giant stone monument. The pitch-black giant wall soared straight into the clouds. Under the huge black wall, there was a number marked in stainless steel. Number 0013. This was the Tokyo area's number 13 giant stone monument. Outside the giant stone monument was the active unexplored territory of Protozoa. Inside the giant stone monument, there were endless ruins that humans didn't want to stay in. In the ruins, collapsed buildings and houses with their roofs crushed could be seen everywhere. Toppled telephone poles wrapped around wires, drawing a complicated pattern like a flower rope. The ground was piled up with aluminum cans and all kinds of plastic garbage. After the garbage was fermented, the ground under the garbage emitted some heat. Wood, mortar, and rusty nails were scattered all over the ground, making it difficult to see the original ground. And in such a garbage dump, there was a manhole cover like the cover of an underground sewer. Looking carefully, next to the manhole cover, there was a symbol that absolutely couldn't be seen if one didn't look carefully. It was a symbol. Above this symbol there was a feather. Impressively, it was a 5-pointed star decorated with feathers. If this manhole cover was opened, it would be found that under the manhole cover was a tunnel similar to a sewer. And at the end of the tunnel, there was a base. A base that extended from the outer peripheral area of Tokyo to the unexplored territory outside the giant stone monument. Inside, there were people doing research and work. Obviously, this was a research institute. Although there were clearly some fully armed combatants, there were also quite a few researchers. They wore white lab coats and walked around the underground research institute, busying themselves nonstop. If this scene was on the ground, it would definitely have a completely different smell of technology. But here, this scene only gave people the feeling of shuddering. Because in this research institute, there were no sophisticated instruments, no fantasy-like technology, only bulging bags. The bags were surrounded by blood vessels, densely hanging down from the dome ceiling, almost filling the entire space. Each bag was enough to hold a person. But at this moment, it wasn't a person inside, but a monster soaked in water. There were fish with multiple heads. There were beetles full of lumps. There were also huge ribbon-like creatures that could not be distinguished from nematodes or snakes. There were even xenomorphs that had spikes all over their bodies like hedgehogs, but no one knew what kind of animals they were. Needless to say, these were all primitive animals. The bags hanging from the ceiling looked like culture tanks that were used to cultivate all kinds of primitive animals. Just like that, a group of researchers recorded in front of the bags. From time to time, they would use test tubes to inject some liquids into the bags, and even throw in some pills for the protozoa to consume. The fully armed combatants were patrolling the surroundings, or watching over the entire experiment process. They were all armed with guns. Without a doubt, they were a group of terrorists. However, in this group of terrorists, a portion of them clearly had a different aura. Li Ching-in and Meneshwaran were among these people. Clearly, these combat personnel, who had completely different auras from ordinary terrorists, were all mechanical soldiers. They belonged to the mysterious organization, Five Xiong Association, and were modified by Grunewald, who even one of the four wise men, Miroto-jin, claimed to be the world's strongest brain. They were more powerful than ordinary mechanical soldiers. At this time, these mechanical soldiers were surrounding a person covered in a black robe. Each of them had an angry look on their faces as they loudly expressed to the top operatives, "Your Excellency, we can't be passive like this anymore. Go out and fight with them. When has our Five Xiong Association been forced to this point by others? How dare they do this? We have to make them pay the price." Each of the mechanical soldiers was unimaginably angry. That was to be expected. Although they had been staying in the Underground Research Institute all this time, it was impossible for the people here not to know about the news outside. Now, all the mechanical soldiers already knew that the entire Tokyo area was filled with the figures of the fairy tale police. Moreover, the other party had been searching for the whereabouts of them all this time, trying to kill them all. If it was just like this, then forget it. Who would have thought that the Holy Son of Heaven would actually be so ruthless, ordering the Sima clan to thoroughly investigate all of the high-ranking officials in the Tokyo area? Surprisingly, all of the spies of the Five Xiong Association were dug out, causing the Five Xiong Association to suffer heavy losses. During this time, many members of the Five Xiong Association, who were forced to expose their identities, had conflicts with the fairy tale police. In the end, no one was spared and they were all suppressed. The basic personnel of 1 wing and 2 wings were all arrested and imprisoned. The high-level personnel of 3 wings and 4 wings were executed on the spot. Even one of the top operatives from the Osaka area, Chiwu Zhongshuan, was executed on the spot by Noah. If this loss was not heavy, then what was? Not to mention, Noah's target was not only the Tokyo area. According to the news in the past month, Your Excellency and the others already knew that Noah sent a large number of police to investigate the 5 major areas of the Japanese archipelago for various reasons. The purpose was to uproot the Five Xiong Association. And it was not that there were no results. Just like the Tokyo region, in the other 4 regions, there were a large number of cadres of the Wuxiang Association, who were found by the police of fairy tale from the high officials of the various regions. They were completely finished. Now, except for Qi Wuzongxuan, the rest of the top operatives were all like rats on the street. They were forced to hide by the fairy tale police. It should be known that there were a total of 5 top operatives in the 5 Xiang Association. Now, except for one of the top operatives who was like Qi Wuzongxuan, who won the position of the ruler of a region, the rest of the top operatives were all forced to hide in secret bases. Your Excellency was the same. After hearing this news, the mechanical soldiers that had been suppressed for a month finally couldn't help but explode. We are noble people whose goal is world hegemony. When did we fall to this point? In the past few years, we have already infiltrated the top management of the 5 major areas of the Japanese archipelago. We were only one step away from winning the position of the ruler of the 5 areas, unifying the Japanese archipelago, and then going abroad to rule the world. Now all of our efforts have been destroyed. Damn it. Damn the fairy tale. A mere civilian organization dares to do this. Your Excellency, let's use all of our strength and fight them. Your Excellency. Saito Yoshihito was the most resentful one among the mechanical soldiers, and he kept growling. Right now the only way for us to survive is to kill Noa Doria. We have to kill him. Yes. Kill Noa Doria. Kill that damned cursed child shelter. It's all because of him that we fell to this point. Hearing the mechanical soldiers led by Saito Yoshihito shouting angrily, on the side, Li Qingyin, who was holding a kodachi in a daze, lowered his head and couldn't help but laugh in his heart. In the end, if the Wuxiang Association didn't target the fairy tale, then they wouldn't have fallen to this point, right? Only you are allowed to deal with others, but others are not allowed to fight back? All of you are stupid people who rely on your identity as mechanical soldiers to think that you are superior to others. Li Qingyin wasn't the only one who thought so. Your Excellency also thought so. Fight. Your Excellency said in an extremely cold voice. Then tell me, how do you plan to fight? Your Excellency's cold voice made everyone quiet down. Can you destroy one of the 3 demon realms? Your Excellency said sarcastically. No way, right? But they can? Then how do you fight? Do you want to die? Everyone was speechless. Including Saito Yoshihito, all the mechanical soldiers felt aggrieved. Chapter 2160. How could they not feel aggrieved? As the work of Professor Grunewald, who is known as the strongest brain among the 4 wise men, the mechanical soldiers here all thought that they were better than the other 3 strongest brain mechanical soldiers. This was not because they thought highly of themselves, but because it was the truth. Didn't Miroto Jean also say that even she could not understand a part of Grunewald's mechanical soldier modification blueprint? Moreover, Miroto Jean even admitted that if she were in Grunewald's shoes, she would not have the confidence to revive Grunewald with just a piece of brain fragment and modify his entire body into a machine. The degree of mechanization was extremely close to 100%. This was no longer in the category of modification, but in the category of creation. Miroto Jin's current technology was only at the level of modifying a part of a human into a machine. The other 2 people in charge of the mechanization project were also at the same level. They could not mechanize a person to 100%, not even 50%. This showed how terrifying Grunewald's technology was. The mechanical soldiers modified by such a person were naturally much stronger than the mechanical soldiers modified by the other people in charge. Of course, this was only in terms of performance. Combat skills and so on still depended on the person. For example, the mechanical properties of a bodyguard's body were close to 100%, so the strength he could unleash was incredibly high. However, in the previous battle with Tina, even if he was forced into a corner, he would only use his body to resist, and his attacks would only be punching 1 punch at a time. He was completely reliant on his performance in battle. Compared to those true masters, his combat skills were so weak that it was unbearable. If the Menace Protector's combat skills were a little higher, he wouldn't ask to be like Mujenko, but only to be like Rintaro, who grasped a systematic school of combat techniques. Then his combat strength would soar straight up, surpassing even Li Qingyin. Unfortunately, Grunewald did not realize this at all. He was only immersed in his hatred of Noah, and did not think about training himself. He even thought about killing Noah with his own hands all day long. How stupid! However, Grunewald's strength was still terrifying. At the very least, he was comparable to the initiators in the top 100 IP rankings. Note that this refers to the initiator, not the facilitator. Initiators who could borrow the protozoan virus in their bodies to easily obtain power surpassing that of humans were existences in the top 100 IP rankings. If they were to fight a facilitator one-on-one, only the facilitators in the top 10 IP rankings would dare to say that they had a chance of winning. Therefore, in terms of the promoter's ability, the threat protector was enough to rank in the top 20 of the IP rankings. How could he not think that he was better than the rest of the mechanical soldiers, if he could reach such a level despite having such terrible combat skills? However, these mechanical soldiers, who had always thought that they were extremely outstanding, were now forced by Noah to hide in this underground research institute that did not see the light of day. They were like street rats. How could they not feel aggrieved? In fact, you are also sullen. Undoubtedly, our Wuxiang Association was so close to completely infiltrating the 5 major regions of the Japanese archipelago. Some of our top operatives had already become regional rulers, and some were like me, already moving towards the position of ruler. In the end, His Excellency was filled with hatred. In the end, Noah Dole's one operation had beaten us all back to square one, and even faced the threat of annihilation. In your heart, you had already taken the threat of Fairyland seriously. However, you never thought that Fairyland could completely eradicate the Wuxiang Association. Firstly, it was because Fairyland was in the light while they were in the dark. It would not be that easy to completely find them. Secondly, it was because Fairyland had a lot of scruples. They had to face the difficulties of countries around the world while protecting the people of their forces. They had too many weaknesses and could not spare enough manpower to deal with the Wuxiang Association. However, the release of an artificial divine relic completely changed everything. Now Fairyland still had to take care of the people in their territory. However, with the help of the artificial divine relic and the addition of almost 1,000 initiators who had reached domain, even if they were to send out more than half of their forces, the rest would be enough to defend Fairyland. Now Fairyland had won the hearts of the people all over the world, and made the countries around the world wary of attacking them. They could no longer brazenly make things difficult for them, and could even invest more manpower to do what they wanted. Moreover, Noah had made the countries around the world go for wool, but come home shorn, and started to take in the cursed children of the world into Fairyland. Not only did Fairyland's manpower not decrease, but it increased instead, with more and more forces to spare. At this time, the Wuxiang Association that had deliberately targeted Fairyland naturally met with a tragedy. If it was not for the advantage of hiding in the dark, the Wuxiang Association would have been wiped out long ago. According to Noah Dole's words, he seems to have noticed my true identity. His Excellency was very irritated. If I continue to stay in the Tokyo area, I will eventually follow in Chi Wu's footsteps. That is why I had planned to abandon everything in the Tokyo area, and temporarily retreat from the area, and find a chance to come back and replace the Sage Son of Heaven. But now this escape route was also sealed. Tokyo, Osaka, Sendai, Sapporo, and Bodo, the 5 major regions of Japan, are all being watched by the police of Fairy Tail. Even if I can escape from the Tokyo area, once I enter the other 4 regions, I will be immediately discovered and completely finished. The more he thought about it, the more irritated he became. But if I don't escape and continue to stay in the Tokyo area, it will definitely be a dead end. In other words, His Excellency only had 2 paths left. 1, flee abroad. 2, flee to unexplored territory. Even if Fairy Tail had more manpower, they would not be able to turn over all the unexplored territories of countries, and even gastronomic animals in the world, right? However, these 2 paths could also force His Excellency into a dead end. If he were to flee abroad, he would have to take a plane. However, Fairyland has an intact artificial satellite, and it is entirely possible to monitor the plane His Excellency took and stop him. If he were to flee to unexplored territory, he would have to face the endless gastronomic animals. In the end, whether he could survive or not was an unknown. Dead end. Dead end. It's all dead end. The irritation in His Excellency's heart finally turned into anxiety. I'm afraid that the other top operatives are also facing the same danger as me. Is there really no other way? The Excellency could not help but growl. Could it be that our glorious Five Feathers Association is really going to be completely finished because of a man? I can't accept this. The Excellency's growl became louder and louder. I can't accept this. However, so what if he could not accept this? When he attacked Fairy Tail, His Excellency should have been mentally prepared. He should have been mentally prepared to be completely annihilated by Fairy Tail. Your Excellency. The mechanical soldiers were all silent, as if they were in the same boat. Is this the end? Li Qingyin pressed on his hat and muttered softly. Why? The bodyguard Zhuorun was lost in his soaring jealousy. Why is the world so biased towards Noah Doria? Yes, the world was biased towards Noah. There was no doubt about this. However, it was all because of Noah's hard work that he had achieved his current status. Even after leaving for 3 years, if it was not for Noah's original plan, Fairyland would not have appeared. All of this was what Noah deserved. The bodyguard Zhuorun, who only wanted to win the beauty and use the holy sun to climb up the ranks, would definitely not understand. Suddenly, Benet the Leech, who was holding the Kodachi and had his head down, suddenly raised his head and shouted loudly, Dad! It's coming! Hearing this, everyone, including Li Qingyin, was stunned. Kaboom! At this moment, the entire Underground Research Institute suddenly shook violently. The Excellency Li Qingyin, the bodyguard Zhuorun, and the mechanical soldiers who were immersed in their resentment and jealousy were directly caught off guard. They were shaken by the violent shaking and stood up in panic. What happened? Earthquake? Earthquake? No. Li Qingyin suddenly stood up straight. That's the aftermath of the explosion. That one sentence caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble. Chapter 2161. Another explosion sounded, causing the entire Underground Research Institute to tremble. It was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. It was extremely thrilling. What's going on? Is there a collapse? Why is this happening? In the Underground Research Institute that was shaking violently as if an earthquake had occurred, the researchers in white coats were all panicking. They all let out sorrowful cries and screams. Their faces were full of fear, but they still swayed under the violent shaking and fell to the ground. Not only the researchers, but even the fully armed terrorists were in a panic. Under the tremors, they panicked and even turned into rolling gourds, rolling all over the place. The entire Underground Research Institute was in chaos. Only the mechanical soldiers could barely maintain their bodies and not fall to the ground. As for Sir, he had no combat ability at all. If it weren't for the protection of the mechanical soldiers, he would have fallen to the ground in a sorry state. However, at this moment, Sir and the others could no longer care about their sorry state. Because compared to their sorry state, their hearts were shaken even more. Someone is blowing up the tunnel in front of the Research Institute. It must be like this. Attack. Attack. The mechanical soldiers were both shocked and angry. Naturally, they were shocked by this sudden change. But they were angry about the current situation. Someone is actually attacking? The mechanical soldiers, who were already feeling aggrieved because they were hiding in the Underground Research Institute, were angered by the fact that they were attacked. Only 2 people were equally surprised, but they were not angry. Instead, they felt that the temperature of their bodies was decreasing. Of these 2 people, one was Sir, and the other was Li Qingyin. This was because both of them immediately knew who had attacked the base. At a certain moment, the sound of the explosion suddenly disappeared. Rumble. The entire Underground Research Institute, which was shaking violently like an earthquake, gradually recovered. It had stopped. Didn't the collapse affect this place? That's great. One by one, the researchers and terrorists got up from the ground, their faces full of lingering fear. Only the mechanical soldiers noticed that something was wrong. Of course, Sir also didn't think that it was over. Looking at the door in front of the Underground Research Institute, Sir slowly clenched his fists and said bitterly and hoarsely, "Is it here?" As soon as he finished speaking, bang! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the door of the Underground Research Institute exploded, setting off a huge wave of flames and shockwaves. The flames and shockwaves turned into surging waves of fire. Together with the fragments of the door, they surged into the Underground Research Institute like an explosion of flames. The strong impact directly affected the entire research institute, shaking the entire place. Ah! All the researchers and terrorists felt their ears ring from the powerful explosion. Their minds went blank, as if they had been attacked by an invisible force. All of them saw stars and fell down with miserable cries. However, your group had long been prepared. Adding on the fact that your strength was tyrannical, they protected you behind them and hurriedly retreated. Fortunately, the explosion didn't last long. Not long after, the intense commotion subsided. However, the entire Underground Research Institute was in a mess. Charred pieces of the door were scattered everywhere, and the air was filled with thick smoke. Cough, cough, cough. The researchers and terrorists started coughing one after another. However, all the mechanical soldiers opened their eyes wide and looked in the direction of the door in disbelief. Da-da-da-da-da. Following a flurry of footsteps, adults and children with guns in their hands poured into the Underground Research Institute from outside the door. They lined up neatly on both sides and aimed their guns in front of them. What? Police. Attackers. How could this be? Only then did the researchers come to their senses, but they were all panicking. The terrorists were also shocked. They almost reflexively raised the guns in their hands and pointed them at the policemen who were rushing in. Your Excellency! Your Excellency! All the mechanical soldiers immediately pulled out the guns they carried and pointed them in front of them, protecting Your Excellency behind them. Even the bodyguards pulled out their guns in panic and pointed them in front of them, as if they were caught off guard. Only Li Ching-yin and Leech Binet Jr. stood calmly in place. Dad. Leech Binet Jr. pulled out a pair of kodachi. His eyes turned scarlet, and his face was full of murderous intent. No. It's not time to make a move yet. Li Ching-yin stood there casually, but his eyes were fixed in front of him. The whole place suddenly fell silent. On one side, there were obviously well-trained police troops. On the other side, there was an underground organization mixed with mechanical soldiers, terrorists, and researchers. Both sides occupied the front and back of the Underground Research Institute. They used the guns in their hands as deterrents, forming a standoff. However, the behavior of the two sides was completely different. The former looked cold and ruthless. The latter, on the other hand, were surprised, panicked, angry, and terrified. It was as if they had all sorts of emotions. It was clear at a glance who was the attacker and who was the victim. His Excellency, who was protected by a group of mechanical soldiers, raised his eyes and looked at the police troops who occupied the door. He clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "You're still not going to come out." As soon as he said this, a voice immediately responded, "I'm just thinking whether I should capture you alive or give you a more dignified death." As he said this, a figure slowly walked in from the door under the protection of his companions. Looking at the person, the super metal face of the bodyguard twisted like muscles. His eyes were full of hatred as he said the name of the person. Noah Doria. Who else could it be other than Noah? Of course, Noah wasn't the only person who came in. Beside Noah, Hina, Mugging, Xiaoshi, Yinju, and Rintaro all walked in with Noah. Hina. Leech Binet Jr.'s eyes widened. His scarlet eyes were full of murderous intent. Binet Leech Jr. Tina met Binet Leech Jr.'s murderous gaze, and her delicate doll-like features became extremely cold and detached in the instant that she entered battle mode. As for the others, they immediately looked at the black-robed His Excellency. Is that the top operative of the Wuxiang Association? Xiaoshi's face was full of wisdom. He really knows how to hide. He actually hid in a place like this, Yanju complained. Top operative. Mugging looked at His Excellency and tightened his grip on his sword. His Excellency. Rintaro had a complicated expression. He wanted to ask something but gave up because he thought of something. His Excellency naturally noticed Mugging and Rintaro's gazes. However, he only glanced at them before turning to Noah. Meeting His Excellency's gaze, Noah smirked. "We finally meet, Your Excellency." After saying that, Noah narrowed his eyes and said, "Don't worry." "No, I should say we meet again, right?" "Again?" Everyone present was stunned. "Again?" In other words, Noah and Your Excellency have already met? But if that's the case, why would Noah let Your Excellency go? Everyone was confused. Only Rintaro knew why Noah said this. He lowered his head and remained silent. His Excellency was also silent. After a while he suddenly spoke. "Actually, 3 years ago, when you just created Fairy Tale, the top operatives of our Wuxiang Association gathered once to discuss the existence of Fairy Tale." "Oh, is that so?" Noah replied nonchalantly. "Then, what was the result of the discussion?" "We believe that the guild you created has a lot of potential. If it can successfully survive the resistance of others, it will become the largest police organization in Tokyo," His Excellency said. "For this reason, Chiwu Zhongshuan even thought that he could absorb you and make your guild our pawn and do things for us." "That sounds like something he would say." Noah shrugged. Perhaps from that moment on one thing was destined. Either you die or I die. Chapter 2162. Noah's casual words finally caused His Excellency's expression to become completely distorted. "As expected, we shouldn't have allowed Fairy Tale to survive in the first place," His Excellency bellowed. "At that time, we should have taken action against you. Unfortunately, if you didn't take action at that time, you were destined to fail," Noah said sarcastically. "Of course, even if you took action at that time, you were destined to fail as well." After saying that, Noah raised his hand directly. Kacha kacha kacha. Accompanied by the sound of countless mechanical movements, the facilitators belonging to Fairy Tale all raised the guns in their hands and pointed the muzzles forward. "Wait. Don't kill us." "I surrender. Surrender." The researchers in white coats screamed one by one. However, Noah, who did not like to kill the innocent, ordered indifferently. "Kill." This word was like a fuse that completely detonated the smoke in the air. Bang 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 bang. In the next moment, the facilitators belonging to Fairy Tale pulled the triggers of the guns in their hands without any hesitation, causing the muzzles to flicker wildly. Instantly, countless bullets rained down like a torrential downpour. Amidst the sounds of bodies being torn apart, the bullets sank into the bodies of the researchers wearing white coats one after another. Ugh. Woo. One by one, the researchers in white coats let out a mournful cry before they died and fell one by one. In just a short while, most of the researchers in white coats fell to the ground, dead as could be. "No. Don't kill us. Surrender. Surrender." The remaining researchers all let out desperate cries, but then they were shot one after another. They fell one after another, dyeing the ground a scarlet color. Looking at this scene, Noah's expression didn't change at all from the beginning to the end. Even Hina, Yanju, Xiashi, and all the cursed children present did not have any change in expression, indifferently looking at the researchers walking toward their deaths. Even Rintaro had been shooting the researchers one by one, ignoring the terrorists. Logically speaking, a group of enemies without any combat ability and had already surrendered, even if they were criminals, should be arrested instead of shot directly. Even if it was Noah's order, the righteous Rintaro should not be so cruel as to kill a group of people without any ability to resist. However, whether it was Noah, who cherished his life, or the righteous Rintaro, at this time, neither showed mercy, not even the slightest bit of emotion. The reason was very simple. It was because of the gastronomic animals in the bags around them. The police belonging to Fairy Tale had already learned from Noah that the 5 Xiang Association's people were cultivating gastronomic animals in an attempt to control them to eliminate rebellious countries. This move was simply insane. Those were gastronomic animals, after all. Not to mention whether or not they could be controlled. Once they were released, it was very likely that the gastronomic animal virus would spread in a country or region, causing a disaster. Therefore, humans regarded gastronomic animals as targets that must be eliminated. If they did not completely eliminate the gastronomic animals, even if only one was left, in the end, it could threaten the entire human race. The gastronomic animal virus was terrifying. Once they were infected, their numbers would immediately increase, and they would spread like a plague. Therefore, even if there was only one stage-I gastronomic animal, it could eventually lead to the extinction of the human race. Under such circumstances, the researchers here actually did not care about the life and death of the human race. Not only did they not destroy the protozoa, they even cultivated them. This sin was more serious than any of the murderers in the Wuxiang Association, who were stained with blood. To be able to become a member of Fairy Tale, the people here were not people who did not know the severity of the matter. In addition, Fairy Tale had long been the foundation of Fairyland. In the past, they were also responsible for enforcing the laws and regulations in Fairyland, so they would not show any favoritism toward crimes. In view of this, even if the researchers had no combat ability and voluntarily surrendered, the facilitators on the scene would still mercilessly execute them. Thus, one by one, the researchers became the first batch of victims, and all of them fell. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but it was only a matter of seconds. As the researchers fell one by one, the mechanical soldiers and the terrorists finally reacted one after another. "What are you still standing there for?" Zhuowei roared. "Shoot." Frankly speaking, no matter how they took turns, it was not Zhuowei's turn to give the order. However, in the current situation, no one could care so much. Bang 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 bang. At that moment, the terrorists all raised the guns in their hands, roaring as they fired continuously. "Your Excellency! Your Excellency! We must retreat. Retreat quickly. The current situation is not good for us." The mechanical soldiers continued to surround His Excellency, firing at the front while shouting at His Excellency. "What do you think?" Li Qingyin stood leisurely beside His Excellency, twirling the gun in his hand as he laughed softly. "Retreat? Or do you want to die?" "Retreat." His Excellency also pulled out his gun, firing as he gave the order. "Retreat through the emergency exit. Quick." A group of mechanical soldiers immediately covered His Excellency, retreating continuously to the back. After opening an automatic door, all of them rushed in and fled without a trace. Even Zhuoren, the bodyguard, glared in Noah's direction. Then he turned around and fled without a trace. Previously, they had been clamoring to fight it out with the Fairy Tale police officers, but now, each one of them was running away faster than the other. "Daddy." Binay Leach had been staring at Tina, the kodachi in her hand trembling uncontrollably, her lips trembling as if she was trying to hold back something. No. Of course, Li Qingyin knew what his baby daughter was thinking, and rejected without hesitation. Binay Leach's face was filled with unwillingness, but she did not disobey Li Qingyin's order. She glared at Tina, then turned her head. Immediately, Li Qingyin and Binay Leach also fled into the emergency exit, disappearing in a short while. After the group of mechanical soldiers retreated into the emergency exit, the automatic door suddenly closed. "What? Wait. There's still us. Your Excellency. Your Excellency." The group of terrorists who were confronting Fairy Tale's police suddenly panicked. Unfortunately, the current situation was very clear. A group of the lowest level personnel, with only one wing, had already been abandoned by His Excellency, just to buy some time. Regarding this, the police under the command of Fairy Tale showed no mercy. They crazily unleashed their firepower, shooting down one terrorist after another. Damn it! Damn police officers! Damn it! One by one the terrorists madly shot. However, the initiators of Fairy Tale all held up their heavy anti-terrorist shields, blocking all the incoming bullets. The surface of the shields was constantly hit by the bullets, causing sparks to fly from the friction. On the other hand, the facilitators of Fairy Tale were all hiding behind their partner initiators as they accurately shot down the terrorists who couldn't find cover. For this attack, Noah was fully prepared. On the other hand, the people of Wuxiang Association were passively facing the attack, so naturally, they were not prepared. Thus, the group of terrorists was finally brought to justice, and all of them were shot to death. Bang! In front of the emergency exit, Noah kicked open the sturdy automatic door, looked at the long tunnel in front of him, and a cold smile without any smile appeared on his face. "Let's see where you can escape to." Under Noah's lead, a group of fairy tale police officers rushed into the tunnel and began to chase after the remaining members of the Wuxiang Association, who had retreated back to their original location. The show had just begun. Chapter 2163. Quick! Quick! Those useless winged fools can't hold off Fairy Tale for too long. We have to be quick. Quick! In the dim passageway, a group of mechanical soldiers escorted His Excellency as they ran forward, desperately running for their lives. Li Qingyin and Li Binet were behind everyone, in charge of bringing up the rear. The passage was very long. Even after running for a while, they still couldn't see the end. Under such circumstances, when they thought of the fairy tale chasing after them, the mechanical soldiers were extremely anxious and couldn't wait to escape as quickly as possible. In fact, their current speed was still far from the limit of the mechanical soldiers. Although they were of different types, as a modified existence, these mechanical soldiers still had outstanding physical strength compared to ordinary people. If it wasn't because they needed to take care of His Excellency, the mechanical soldiers would definitely be able to retreat faster, right? Thinking of this, Zhuo Meng had the urge to abandon His Excellency. However, although Zhuo Meng was stupid, he didn't know how to spell the word death. Now, under the situation of being targeted by the fairy tale, Zhuo Meng would never be able to live openly under the sun. If he abandoned His Excellency at this time, it would be equivalent to depriving him of the right to live in the shadows. For the Wuxiang Association, even if they failed a mission, they would be executed, not to mention betrayal. Although the Wuxiang Association couldn't even protect themselves now, it was better than Zhuo Meng being alone. Considering this, although Zhuo Meng had the urge to abandon His Excellency, he suppressed it. Of course, Zhuo Meng wasn't a patient person. Looking at the endless passage in front of him, Zhuo Meng couldn't help but anxiously shout at His Excellency. His Excellency, how long until we reach the exit? It's still early. His Excellency could still maintain his calm. In order to prevent the primitive animals in the research institute from suddenly escaping, or to prevent them from accidentally being infected and becoming primitive animals, this base was built very large, so the exit naturally wouldn't be set too close. Hearing this, Zhuo Meng almost cursed out loud. Why did they build the base so large for no reason? So what if the primitive gut animals ran out? How many people could die? Zhuo Run, who hadn't considered the possibility of exposing himself, cursed in his heart as he grew more and more anxious. Hurry, hurry, hurry. You have to be quick. Zhuo Wei roared in his heart. I can't let that guy catch me again. Recalling the scene of being executed by Noah in front of all the people in Tokyo 3 years ago, the bodyguard Zhuo Ren felt hatred and anxiety in his heart. With Zhuo Ren's hatred for Noah, he naturally couldn't accept the fact that he was defeated by Noah again. That hateful Noah Dole, Zhuo Ren said angrily. Isn't it just because they have more people? Damn it. It was not just the bodyguards. A portion of the mechanical soldiers were also cursing angrily, because of the anxiety in their hearts. Only a portion of them remained calm, but they kept turning their heads to look behind them. Their footsteps never stopped. Li Qingyin, who was in charge of bringing up the rear, didn't even turn his head. He unhurriedly followed behind everyone, pressing down on his hat, and whispering to Li Binet Jr., "Is there any sign of him catching up?" No. Li Binet Jr. had been releasing his ability. His pupils completely turned into a scarlet color as he followed Noah closely, while shaking his head. I didn't hear any footsteps, only the sound of the wind. Yes, only the sound of the wind. Moreover, this gust of wind was getting closer and closer. Whoosh. In the sound of the air being torn apart, a figure suddenly blew past like a gust of wind. It swept past His Excellency and the others who were desperately trying to escape, brushed past them, and flashed in front of them. Dead. Li Binet Jr. finally realized that something was wrong and screamed. Stop. Li Qingyin rarely shouted, and his voice was slightly distorted. His Excellency, Zhuo Run, and many mechanical soldiers suddenly stopped as if they had slammed on the brakes. Their footsteps rubbed against the ground, raising a cloud of dust as they tried their best to stop. At the same time, on the passage in front, the figure that turned into a gust of wind suddenly flashed and appeared there. blocking everyone's path. What? How is it possible? When did this happen? Looking at the figure blocking in front of the passage, the mechanical soldiers all gasped. His Excellency and Zhuoren's breathing became a little rapid, and their expressions were extremely ugly. In front of them, the figure blocking the passage raised his head. A pair of eyes that were like dark stars flickered with a frightening expression in the dim passage, and the corners of his mouth lifted into a faint smile. What? You're not going to continue running? You? His Excellency could not help but take a step back. The mechanical soldiers' hearts tightened, and they hurriedly raised the guns in their hands and aimed at him. Unfortunately, before the mechanical soldiers could pull the trigger, the dark eyes that were as dazzling as stars suddenly became sharp, and his gaze became extremely sharp. Being stared at by that sharp gaze, the mechanical soldiers present felt as if they were imprisoned by an extremely heavy force. Their bodies became extremely stiff, and they could not even bend their fingers on the trigger. Surrender, Noah said indifferently. If you surrender now, for the sake of Mugging and Rintaro, I can at least spare your life. This sentence made His Excellency's hand tremble slightly. However, the mechanical soldiers were enraged. Arrogant. Too arrogant. Who do you think you are? You're just an ordinary human who hasn't even undergone any modifications. Do you really think you can defeat so many of our mechanical soldiers? You actually dared to chase after him alone. How stupid. One by one, the mechanical soldiers began to clamor loudly. It was only then that everyone realized what was going on. Obviously, Noah had abandoned the police force of Fairy Tail and chased after them alone. Understanding this, the mechanical soldiers were relieved, and a cruel expression appeared on their faces. Idiot. Zhuorun even sneered, his voice full of hatred and joy. Since you came to die alone, don't blame us. After saying that, Zhuorun raised his gun first and pointed it at Noah. The rest of the mechanical soldiers also raised their guns one by one, and the black muzzles were all pointed at Noah. Go to hell. Following Zhuoren's roar, the mechanical soldiers finally pulled the triggers one by one. Bang, 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 bang. A series of gunshots rang out. Muzzle flames burst out from the muzzles one by one, and bullets that could not be seen by the naked eye were released forward, covering Noah's direction like raindrops. Of course, for ordinary people, these bullets were indeed undetectable. However, for Noah, the speed of the bullets was a bit slow. Not to mention that Noah had superb sensing ability. Any attacks that carried hostility, malice, and killing intent could not be hidden. Even with Noah's current vision and senses that had been eternally strengthened, he could easily capture the trajectory of the bullets. Looking at the rain of bullets that shot violently, Noah even found it difficult to move his body. He could only convert the vast and boundless energy in his body into magic power, and then convert the magic power into crushing magic power, which rose slightly from his body. The moment the bullets that came in contact with the crushing magic power on the surface of Noah's body, they suddenly paused, then shattered like dust and scattered to the ground. Without exception. This is a lie, right? How is this possible? All the mechanical soldiers were stunned. His Excellency was even more shocked. Are you also a mechanical soldier? Such an inconceivable scene was not something a human could achieve. Of course, everyone would think that Noah was a mechanical soldier. Unfortunately, there is no part of my body that is mechanized, not even a piece of skin. Noah curled his lips. The one standing here is just a human monsters. Hearing this, the mechanical soldiers who were shocked were furious. You're courting death. Kill him. Murderous intent spread slightly from the space. Chapter 2164. Noah was strong. Very strong. At the very least, from the information collected by the Wuxiang Association, as well as the deeds that everyone in the world knew, Noah's strength was evident. He had once destroyed a stage V zodiacal protozoan in one hit. He had once annihilated an army of thousands of protozoans in an instant. From a human's point of view, this level of achievement was simply appalling. Even from the point of view of the mechanical soldiers, This level of battle record could be considered unbelievable. It should be noted that until now, the existence that could single-handedly annihilate a stage V zodiacal protozoan was the top 3 in the IP ranking. Moreover, they were the initiators who had reached domain. Only Rintaro, who relied on the means left behind by Noah to annihilate a stage V zodiacal protozoan, was able to enter the top 10 in the IP ranking. As for humans, it was simply impossible for them to single-handedly annihilate a stage V protozoan. As for an army of thousands of protozoans, annihilating it in an instant was something that even the most powerful initiators could not do, let alone humans. Therefore, in the eyes of others, Noah's achievement was truly appalling. However, even so, everyone in the world only felt that it was inconceivable and unbelievable, and never once regarded Noah as an omnipotent god. That was because to the outside world, Fairyland had announced more than once that Noah was able to achieve this achievement by relying on a secret weapon. For example, the shattering bullet was the explanation given by Noah. In addition, Rintaro had also used the same bullet to annihilate a stage V zodiacal protozoan, which increased the persuasiveness of this claim. Therefore, in the eyes of others, Noah was able to achieve such a terrifying achievement by relying on that terrifying secret weapon. Then, the announcement of the artificial artifact made everyone believe that compared to his apparent strength, Noah himself was more of a research expert, specializing in all kinds of terrifying secret weapons. In light of this, although humans were shocked by Noah's actions, they did not think that Noah was that terrifying. After all, Noah was just a human. No matter how strong a human was, how strong could he be? At least, in terms of pure strength, even if it was a modified mechanical soldier, it was still far behind the most powerful level of the initiators. There had never been a mechanical soldier that could truly defeat an initiator that had reached the domain level, let alone an ordinary person. Noah's incredible power made his excellency and the others believe that Noah might have been modified into a mechanical soldier. However, they were all mechanical soldiers. One side only had one person, while the other side had more than 10. What was there to be afraid of? This was what the mechanical soldiers were thinking. Only Yu and Li Qingyin did not dare to underestimate Noah from the beginning to the end. His Excellency was worried that Noah would take out another terrifying secret weapon. Perhaps, that incredible power just now was Noah using some kind of secret weapon. That might not be the case. As for Li Qingyin, it was purely based on the intuition of a strong person. Undoubtedly, Li Qingyin felt that Noah was standing there like an ordinary person. His expression was relaxed, but there was not a single flaw on his body. It was as if he would immediately be killed if he rushed up. This feeling made Li Qingyin extremely vigilant. He did not dare to underestimate Noah at all. There were also mechanical soldiers that were similar to Li Qingyin. These mechanical soldiers, even in the Five Xiang Association, had top-notch combat abilities. They were on the same level as Li Qingyin, and there were even some that surpassed Li Qingyin. However, after being provoked by Noah, no matter how vigilant they were overcome by their own pride. Since bullets won't work, then let's fight directly. Go. Let's go together. If it was any other time, a group of mechanical soldiers who thought highly of themselves would naturally disdain to join forces and bully a single person. However, the person in front of them was an existence that all mechanical soldiers hated. Moreover, the police from Fairy Tale were chasing after him. They could catch up to him at any moment. Since that was the case, they could not care less anymore. Go. Kill him. One by one, the mechanical soldiers moved instantly. Boom. Some of the mechanical soldiers directly broke through the ground and shot out like bullets, charging in Noah's direction. Some of the mechanical soldiers displayed magical abilities, causing the air to tremble slightly. Some were like Tina, able to control items from a distance, causing daggers, blades, and even tires to shoot out like arrows. Some were like Li Qingyin, able to control other forces. They could either control the wind, merge into the air, become invisible, release scorching flames, or create gravity fields. They attacked Noah dreamily. Suddenly, in front of Noah's vision, there seemed to be endless attacks coming at him. In this regard, Noah only felt that it was rather interesting, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. If that's the case, then I'll play with you. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah stomped on the ground with a force that was pathetically weak compared to his own physical ability, causing the ground to suddenly tremble, and small stones were shaken up. Noah waved his hand and gathered the small stones into his palm. Then he exerted force and threw them out. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Those extremely ordinary-looking pebbles were like many powerful bullets, bringing with them an astonishing force. They brought about sharp sounds of air being torn apart as they shot forward, heading toward the incoming mechanical soldiers and their attacks. The first thing he faced was the barrage of attacks. Boom 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 boom. Under the impact of the small stones that shot out like bullets, the long-distance attacks, whether it was daggers, blades, tires, spiral winds, scorching flames, or gravity fields, all of them exploded in midair like fireworks. Dong 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 dong. The remaining pebbles landed on the close combat mechanical soldiers that were charging toward Noah one after another, triggering a series of muffled sounds that were as heavy as cannon booms. The mechanical soldiers seemed to have been struck by lightning as they were sent flying while spewing out blood. The mechanical soldiers that did not charge out, but were attacking from afar were all stunned. Even His Excellency and Li Chingyin, who hadn't made a move, narrowed their eyes in shock. In the end, only one person was not hit by a single pebble, and still managed to rush in front of Noah. Hiya! Zhuo Weiren let out a ferocious roar as he clenched his metal fists tightly. Bang, 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 bang. Following a series of loud gunshots, the super metal arm of the bodyguard Zhuo Ren ejected bullet shells one after another. That scene was incredibly similar to when Rintaro activated the power of his prosthetic limb. Obviously, Zhuo Weiren and Rintaro were the same type of mechanical soldiers. However, the degree of mechanization was close to 100%, and the enhancement was extremely powerful. Under such circumstances, nearly half of the bullet shells in the prosthetic limb were shot out in succession. The propelling force all turned into substantial attack power, causing Zhuo Weiren's super metal prosthetic limb to swell and shoot out flame-like jets of light that swept across the space like missiles. Go to hell. Zhuo Weiren did not realize that he was the only one attacking, and he threw a punch fiercely. That punch caused the atmosphere to be completely disrupted, and all the pressure was dispelled. With a shocking whistling sound and a sonic boom, it blasted heavily in Noah's direction. In Grunewald's performance test, this attack had even sent a truck flying, and even destroyed a building with a single blow. It was simply unstoppable. Unfortunately, for a real god, this punch was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. In the face of this punch, Noah only raised one hand and faced the super metal fist with his palm. Clang! A dazzling white light flashed in Noah's hand that was extended forward. As soon as Zhuo Wei's fist touched the brilliant white light, it immediately caused the brilliant white light to expand, turning into white lines that spread to the incomparably hard pitch-black arm. Bang! In the next moment, amidst a muffled explosion, the super-thin metal arm that was protecting Zhuo Meng was sliced into cubes of equal size by streams of white lines. It then exploded and turned into fragments. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out from Zhuo Wei's mouth. Chapter 2165. Silence. Dead silence. In the entire vast passageway, the mechanical soldiers were either in a daze, their minds blank, or they were lying on the ground unconscious. Only the agonizing cries of those who were in danger kept ringing out, causing the hearts of the mechanical soldiers to tremble. Your Excellency's heart trembled as well. How is this possible? His Excellency's lips trembled as he whispered. The mechanical soldiers modified by Professor Grunewald, more than 10 of them, are all. They were all defeated in one move. The close combat mechanical soldiers were all wiped out. The long-range attacks of the mechanical soldiers were all neutralized. Even Zhuo Weiren's prosthetic limb was easily shattered by Noah, turning into an incomparably intense pain that assaulted Zhuo Weiren's mind, causing him to cry out in agony. How is this possible? His Excellency was shocked. How is this possible? If the mechanical soldiers were so easily defeated, then why did the 5 Xiang Association spend so much money to modify Grunewald? Aha! Oblivious to the shock in His Excellency's heart, Bao Weijuan hugged his broken arm and screamed miserably. That scream was too mournful. It was as if he had suffered great pain, causing tears to flow out of Zhuo Wei's eyes. Of course, Bao Weijuan's body was almost 100% mechanized. Except for the head, the rest of the body only looked like a human, but not a real human. Therefore, people with outstanding physical health did not need to eat. They only needed to sleep so that their brain could rest. Naturally, there was no humanized modification like the tear ducts. In view of this, Zhuo Ruren couldn't even cry. However, it just so happened that the mechanical body of the bodyguard could transmit pain. Even the pain nerves are connected to the mechanical body. It's probably because Grunewald understands that this way, it won't lose its combat instincts and will be able to unleash greater combat power, Noah said with a frown. However, your screams are still too unpleasant to listen to. It's just a broken arm, at least endure it. With that, Noah waved his hand. Buzz. A burst of invisible magic power transformed into a substantial impact that suddenly appeared and blasted heavily onto Bao Weijuan's body. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Bodyguard Zhuoren, who was still screaming, directly flew out as if he was hit by a truck. He turned into a rolling gourd and rolled several times on the ground before finally stopping. He rubbed against the ground and slid all the way to His Excellency. His Excellency suddenly took a step back as if he had been frightened. The other long-range combat-type mechanical soldiers also seemed to be frightened and subconsciously took a step back. However, as soon as these long-range combat-type mechanical soldiers took a step back, an anomaly occurred. Bam 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 bam. Without any warning, the surrounding walls of the tunnel exploded again and again, causing the walls to explode one after another. Crash. Chains that seemed to be condensed from the purest light drilled out of the exploded rock wall one by one. Like extremely agile pythons, they streaked across the space and shot toward Your Excellency's group. The mechanical soldiers didn't even have time to react. The chains of light drilled out of the rock wall and wrapped around their bodies. In a panic, all the mechanical soldiers were tied up. What is this? Chains. Chains of light. That man, did he set up a trap here long ago? How would the mechanical soldiers know? This was not a trap that had been set up long ago. Instead, Noah turned the magic power in his body into divine power, and poured it into the ground through his feet. Then, he let the divine power spread to the surrounding rock walls. Using the characteristics of shaping, it turned into chains of light and broke out of the wall, binding the long-range mechanical soldiers. In the eyes of ordinary people who couldn't see or even sense divine power, it was naturally as if Noah had set up a trap long ago and lured everyone here. As a result, other than Your Excellency, the only person who was not bound by the chains of light was Li Qingyin. As for the close combat mechanical soldiers, other than the bodyguard who was still holding his broken arm and groaning, the rest had all fainted. Your Excellency only felt a chill in his heart. He looked at Noah as if he was looking at a monster. Noah glanced at Li Qingyin and smiled playfully. You're the only one left. Aren't you going to make a move? Li Qingyin was silent. After a while, Li Qingyin let out a low laugh. I'm really convinced. Li Qingyin raised his hand and made a gesture of surrender. I didn't expect you to be more terrifying than I imagined. As expected of someone who holds the ownership of the world in the palm of his hand. This Five Xiang association is completely incomparable. I surrender. Hearing Li Qingyin's words, Your Excellency's face turned pale. Surrender? Noah continued to glance at Li Qingyin. His playful smile gradually disappeared as he spoke indifferently. Are you really going to surrender? What else can I do? Li Qingyin raised his hand and shrugged. All I want is war, but the Five Xiang Association can't fight against you at all. Moreover, it's already at the end of the road. It's impossible for me to achieve my goal. Since that's the case, I have no reason to continue working for others. That's naturally for the best. Noah looked deeply at Li Qingyin, then suddenly smiled. However, you're the only one who's surrendering, right? Just as Noah's voice fell, a petite figure suddenly rushed out from his side, and rushed towards Noah at an extremely fast speed. You're not allowed to bully my father. Li Qingyin Jr., whose eyes had turned scarlet, rushed to Noah's side as if he had gone mad. The odachi in his hand exploded, causing a large area of blade light to burst forth. In the next moment, a storm of slashes cut through the air and directly covered Noah's direction. At this moment, a faint sound pierced through the air. Behind Your Excellency's group, another petite figure flashed over at an astonishing speed. Without even Li Qingyin noticing, she flashed over Your Excellency's head like a stream of light and flashed to Noah's side. Immediately, a sniper rifle as heavy as a hammer was swung from top to bottom, fiercely swinging towards the storm of slashes. Clang! Following the crisp sound of metal clashing, the heavy sniper rifle and the sharp odachi collided, causing bright sparks to fly. Only then did Li Qingyin Jr. notice. There was one more person in front of him. There was one more person who had caused Li Qingyin Jr. to be unable to sleep at night. Tina! Li Qingyin Jr. called out. You want to hurt Big Brother? Tina's eyes were also scarlet as she looked directly at Li Qingyin Jr., appearing extremely cold. That's impossible. Ah! Binay the leech immediately brandished his odachi like a madman. He didn't even pay attention to Noah as he attacked Tina like a madman. In response, Tina didn't advance but instead retreated, as if she was deliberately luring Li Qingyin Jr. away from Noah's side. Her figure leaped and immediately pulled away from Li Qingyin Jr. Li Qingyin Jr. chased after her without any hesitation. Li Qingyin Jr., who was known to be invincible in close combat, obviously hadn't recovered from the blow of being cleanly defeated by Tina in close combat last time. He had developed an abnormal obsession with Tina. Li Qingyin Jr. Li Qingyin hurriedly shouted. However, just as he shouted this, a chain of light flashed at extreme speed and heavily whipped Li Qingyin's body like a shadow of a whip. Bang! Li Qingyin Jr. didn't know how many muffled sounds were heard, but he was directly sent flying and heavily slammed into a rock wall. His head tilted to the side and there was no more movement. Bang! Another muffled sound was heard. However, this time Noah, who had appeared in front of Li Qingyin Jr., stepped on Li Qingyin Jr.'s chest, causing Li Qingyin Jr. to let out a painful howl. Then Noah raised his head and looked in front of him. Your Excellency was less than half a meter away from Noah. Everyone suddenly went silent, looking at Noah, who was looking at him with a mocking expression. Your Excellency only felt that his body temperature was rapidly decreasing, and his whole body was ice cold. Chapter 2166. Ugh ugh. Bodyguard Zhu's groan became the only sound in the passageway as his chest was stomped on. Noah and Your Excellency looked at each other from less than half a meter away. One had a calm expression from beginning to end, while the other felt cold all over. In fact, the mood of the two was indeed at two extremes. For Noah, after finding the hiding place of His Excellency and the others, the outcome of this operation had already been decided, and it would be difficult for him to have any suspense. For Your Excellency, the Wuxiang Association, which was originally regarded as a glory, was forced to the point of destruction. This fact was perfectly interpreted by the scene of mechanical soldiers lying on the ground or being firmly bound. Despair had already emerged in Your Excellency's heart. Your Excellency didn't even have the urge to escape. In the current situation, Your Excellency couldn't escape. The exit in front had been blocked by Noah. The police in the rear passage were chasing after him. The mechanical soldiers around him were all defeated. Not a single trump card was left in his hand. The only thing Your Excellency could rely on now was the gun in his hand. However, the gun used for self-defense, even at such a close distance, probably couldn't cause any harm to Noah, right? Therefore, Your Excellency just held the gun, and his hand couldn't help but tremble. Seeing this scene clearly, Noah glanced at Your Excellency's face under the black hood, then reached out his hand and slowly took the gun in Your Excellency's hand. Your Excellency couldn't even squeeze out the strength to resist. The gun in his hand was almost taken by Noah without any resistance. Noah said in a casual tone as he twirled his pistol, and twirled it nimbly. Don't you want to say something? Your Excellency? Your Excellency? Your Excellency said self-deprecatingly. Haven't you already guessed my identity? Still calling me Your Excellency? Then, I'll change the way I call you. Noah said faintly. Even at this point, You don't plan to surrender? Ziheng. When this name appeared in this space, a heavy atmosphere immediately filled the air. His Excellency lowered his head. After a while, he reached out and took off the hood on his head. The face that appeared under the hood was a familiar face. The person who had previously provided Noah with clues about Saiwa Zhongshuan's whereabouts in the coffee shop was Mugging and Rintaro's nominal guardian, the former butler of the Tendo family who had once declared that he wanted to become the next ruler of Tokyo as Hang Senichi. When? Ziheng stared at Noah. When did you notice my identity? Just as you planned to lure me into the Self-Defense Forces military camp, wanting the entire military camp to be turned into ashes with me. Noah met Ziheng's gaze. Didn't you tell me on the phone that time? Outside the Self-Defense Forces barracks, Noah said such a sentence when he was talking to His Excellency after getting rid of Toshiro Akiyama. There is only one reason why I came out of the holy residence. That's right. That day, there was only one reason why Noah came out of the holy residence, followed Saiwa Zhongshuan's trail, and was lured into the Self-Defense Forces military camp. That was Ziheng. Mugging had given the task of monitoring Saiwa Zhongshuan to Ziheng. That day, after Ziheng spoke with Mugging, he asked Noah to come out and meet him directly. The plan to lure me into the Self-Defense Forces military camp was closely linked. Although it wasn't very clever, it was almost flawless. Such a plan had to start with luring me out and having me follow Saiwa Zhongshuan. Noah said, if I didn't know who Saiwa Zhongshuan was meeting outside, and went to the Central Control and Development Agency to investigate the surveillance footage, then discovered Soma Myunhai's existence, and changed my target to the Self-Defense Forces military camp, then it wouldn't have succeeded. That's true. Ziheng self-deprecating expression became more and more obvious. In order to lure you to the Self-Defense Forces military camp, it was absolutely necessary to let you notice Soma Myunhai's existence. Since that was the case, as long as you thought about who was the reason why you went to look for Soma Myunhai, then you could basically determine who wanted you dead. The person who made Noah notice Soma Myunhai's existence and go to the Self-Defense Forces military camp was Ziheng. Ziheng used a photo as an excuse to lure Noah out. Then he asked Noah to investigate the surveillance footage and look for Soma Myunhai. This was all part of the plan. I also thought that Saiwa Zhongshuan might be the only one acting. That dictator might know that I sent someone to watch him, so he directed and acted out this scene to make me notice Soma Myunhai. Noah said leisurely. However, when I confirmed that Soma Myunhai was just being used, I was sure that Saiwa Zhongshuan absolutely couldn't direct and act alone. He must have a helper. If Soma Myunhai was really a spy, then Saiwa Zhongshuan might have directed and acted out this scene himself. But Soma Myunhai was just being used, and he was innocent. In that case, as the commander of the self-defense forces in Tokyo, it was impossible for this high-ranking guy not to understand what it meant to secretly meet with the ruler of Osaka. It meant that others had sufficient reason to suspect that the two had been secretly in contact with each other. If things went wrong, he would be charged with treason. Therefore, even if Saiwa Zhongshuan wanted to secretly meet with Soma Myunhai, he couldn't do it. Unless Saiwa Zhongshuan has a helper who is capable enough to have a relationship with Soma Myunhai and ask Soma Myunhai to come out. Noah looked at Ziheng and smiled slightly. This helper, if he runs the pie metal business, don't you think he has enough channels to know Soma Myunhai? Soma Myunhai was the commander of the self-defense forces. Since it was the self-defense forces, wouldn't it be natural for him to buy enough pie metal weapons to deal with animals? Ziheng himself said that because of the pie metal business, he had many channels. Therefore, Ziheng and Soma Myunhai were already acquainted. Relying on your business channels, you even have the guts to participate in the election of the next ruler of Tokyo. You must know a lot of big shots, and it's impossible that Soma Munikyo, the commander of the self-defense forces, doesn't know you. Noah continued to play with the gun in his hand and said casually, plus your ambition, it's hard for people not to suspect you, Mr. Ziheng. Just a suspicion? Ziheng opened his eyes wide. Just a suspicion. And you're sure that I'm you? Even if I'm not sure, so what? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Anyway, in the end, I will definitely catch you and personally take off your hood. Then there's no need for evidence, just suspicion is enough. Ziheng Xianyi was immediately speechless. Then, Ziheng Xianyi laughed again. What a good shelter for the cursed child. Ziheng Xianyi laughed in an extremely bleak manner. This time I admit defeat. You are indeed very powerful. Losing to someone like you is not an injustice. As soon as he finished speaking. Not an injustice? Noah raised his head and stared at Ziheng Xianyi. His pitch-black eyes were filled with an astonishingly cold light. That's right. You're not wronged. But what about the many members of Fairyland who died because of your senseless ambitions? At this moment, an earth-shattering pressure bore down on Ziheng's body, as though gravity had descended from the heavens. Ziheng Xianyi held his breath and felt as if he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. A sense of terror rose in his heart. Poor Ziheng Xianyi. Although he was the top operatives of the Wuxiang Association, he did not have much combat ability. Suppressed by Noah's aura, Ziheng Xian could not even tremble. He could only watch on with a look of horror in his eyes. The surrounding mechanical soldiers that were firmly bound by the chains of light were also affected. Sensing the terrifying pressure in the air, all the mechanical soldiers looked at Noah in horror. The blood in their faces started to fade bit by bit. As for Zhuo Ren, who was under Noah's foot and could not even turn around, his face was filled with horror. His whole body was trembling, and he almost lost control of his bladder. Then Noah slowly raised the gun in his hand and pointed it at Ziheng Xianyi's head. Ziheng Xianyi's pupils shrank to the size of a needle. Chapter 2167. If it was said that Noah and Ziheng Xian had the idea of sparing his life if he surrendered, then now, Noah really had the intention to kill him. Under the targeting of the Five Xiang Association, in the past year, the police officers under the fairy tale really did suffer casualties. Of course, according to Noah's understanding, there were more people who were injured, but fewer who actually died. After all, Fairyland had an extremely strict exclusion policy against outsiders. Only those who sincerely accepted the cursed child would be allowed to live in Fairyland. The rest would not be allowed the right to live there. At most they would be allowed to enter the country. Moreover, this group of people who entered the country must be people who did not reject the cursed child. In this regard, Mugging used the system that Noah used to test facilitators to select facilitators who could partner with the cursed child in Fairyland to form a police force, and exclude those who had ulterior motives or pretended to accept the cursed child. Because of this, Fairyland had always been so peaceful, and had not been infiltrated by the Wuxiang Association. Since that was the case, even if the Wuxiang Association wanted to target the police officers of Fairy Tale, they could only do so in a foreign country. As for the police officers who could carry out missions abroad, they had to at least reach the level of Grade A police officers. Police officers of this level were all elites in the top 1,000 on the IP ranking. Therefore, even if the Wuxiang Association targeted them, it would not be easy to kill elites of this level. However, in the year of targeting, there were still a few police officers who died in the hands of the Wuxiang Association, while the rest fled back to Fairyland with serious injuries. When he thought of this, the pity and consideration in Noah's heart completely disappeared without a trace. Even I, Fairy Tale, have a few police officers who died because of your ambitions. Then how many people have died because of your ambitions? Noah stared at Ziheng Xianyi's face that changed abruptly, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. You can go to hell and make amends. With that, Noah was about to pull the trigger. Pa-dash. At this moment, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the gun that was pointed at Ziheng Xianyi's head. Noah frowned. He turned his head and looked to the side. Mu Geng was clutching Noah's gun tightly. Her head was lowered, and her bangs covered her pretty face. No one could see her current expression. At the same time, Rintaro led the police force and chased after them from the other side of the passage. They only stopped when they saw the scene in front of them. Migensen. Ryutaru instantly understood the current situation and fell silent. Pairs of police officers belonging to Fairy Tale looked at each other, as if they did not understand the current situation. However, they did not raise any questions and just watched quietly. Noah's frown deepened as he looked at Mugung, whose expression could not be seen clearly. It was only then that Mugung spoke in a low voice. "Leave him to me." Hearing this, Noah did not say anything. He only stared at Mugung. After a while, he sighed and lowered the gun in his hand. "Thank you," Mugung said in a voice that only Noah could hear. She immediately moved and stood in front of Ziheng Xianyi. Mugung raised her head and looked at Ziheng Xianyi expressionlessly. "Why?" "No reason." Ziheng Xianyi was silent for a moment, and then said indifferently, "You have your dreams, we have our dreams. That's all." "Is that so?" Mugung bit her lips and stared at Ziheng Xianyi. "For your dreams, it doesn't matter how many people are sacrificed?" "Sacrifice?" Ziheng Xianyi gave a sarcastic smile and gave such an answer. "If it's necessary." This sentence did not provoke Mugung. Instead, it provoked Rintaro. "If it's necessary, then we can sacrifice." Rintaro shouted at Ziheng Xianyi. "Are you such a person? Why can't I be such a person? Do you really think I'm a kind-hearted guardian?" Ziheng Xianyi laughed. "If that's the case, then it's time for you to wake up. The reason why I'm your guardian in name is because you have a deep grudge against the Tentong family. Moreover, you have great potential. You can become two good swords in my hands. Especially you, Tentong Mugung." Ziheng Xianyi said to Mugung word by word. "Your talent can be said to be peerless. Even when you were young, you showed extremely terrifying blade skills. I have seen you fight several times. The average initiator is not your opponent at all. At that time, I thought that when you grow up, you will definitely be able to help me deal with the Tiantong family. If I want to become the ruler of Tokyo, the Tentong family must be eliminated. Otherwise, with the Tentong family that controls almost the entire political scene in Tokyo, there's no way I can become the ruler." Ziheng Xianyi shook his head. "It's a pity that plans can't keep up with changes. I didn't expect that the Tentong family that I've been trying to deal with for so long would be destroyed by a civilian organization that was founded less than a few years ago. I was really surprised at that time. Of course, what surprised me even more was your growth." Ziheng Xianyi's gaze swept across Mugung and Rintaro. One became the acting president of Fairyland, another became the leader of Fairyland's tour group, one ranked in the top 3 of the IP rankings, while the other ranked in the top 10 of the IP rankings. I never imagined that all of you could achieve such accomplishments. However, this has made me realize that I was right in choosing to become your guardians back then. You guys have such great potential. If you could come to my side, you would definitely become my right-hand men." Ziheng Xianyi laughed. "Unfortunately, plans can't keep up with changes. You've completely integrated into Fairyland. There's no way for you to come to my side. I have no choice but to eliminate you." That was why Ziheng Xianyi sent Li Qingyin and Yoshihito Zhuo to lead a group of terrorists to attack the holy abode in an attempt to kill Mugung. Right from the beginning, Ziheng Xianyi was only acting for his own ambition. "You?" Rintaro's anger surged. "You bastard!" Under the control of his anger, Rintaro pointed his gun at Ziheng Xianyi. However, before Rintaro could make a move, a cold gleam of a blade flashed across the space. Slash! Accompanied by a tearing sound like silk, blood suddenly appeared. Ziheng Xianyi's chest was slashed open by the sharp blade, and a large amount of blood spurted out. Blood stained the ground, the walls, and Ziheng Xianyi's entire body. Ziheng Xianyi's eyes widened. A sharp pain struck Ziheng Xianyi's mind. Ziheng Xianyi looked at Mugung in disbelief. All he saw was Mugung holding the long blade that he had unsheathed. His exquisite doll-like face stared emotionlessly at Ziheng Xianyi, and his red lips moved slightly. "You plotted against me and plotted against Rikikoan. On account of the fact that you raised me and took me in, I can write it off," Mugung said coldly. "However, you killed the police of Fairy Tale, as well as my subordinates and companions. I will use your life to pay for it." With that, Mugung raised the long blade in his hand again, and slashed mercilessly. Slash! A large amount of blood splattered everywhere for the second time. Bam! Ziheng Xianyi fell to the ground, and the blood that flowed out from his body formed a pool, staining the ground red. "Your Excellency! Your Excellency! Lord Ziheng!" The mechanical soldiers that were chained up by the chains cried out in pain. Noah saw this scene with his own eyes and sighed again. Then he turned his gaze to his feet. No. No. Yoshihito screamed in fear. Let me go. Let me go. Yoshihito, who had once felt ashamed of falling into Noah's hands, once again begged for mercy, just like 3 years ago. In response, Noah only pressed the muzzle of his gun against Yoshihito's head. No. As Yoshihito screamed in pain, Noah shot out the bullet that had been infused with shattering magic. The super metal head and the protozoa's head exploded into pieces and scattered all over the ground. Then Noah turned around and ordered, "Bring the rest of the mechanical soldiers back." At this point, the crusade had come to an end. Chapter 2168. Tokyo District 1, International Hotel. In one of the hotel rooms, Mugging stood by the window, looking at the streets below. Undoubtedly, her delicate doll-like face did not carry any expression, but it gave off a very sad feeling. The sun shone through the window and shone on Muging's body, covering the girl's body with a layer of golden gauze. The girl did not notice this at all. She just kept looking at the scenery outside the window. Even her eyes were a little unfocused, as if she had lost her soul. Ever since returning to the hotel, Mugging had been like this. She had been like this for at least 4 to 5 hours. During this process, Mugging did not move at all, not even blinking her eyes. It was as if she was no longer here, leaving only a shell. And obviously, the girl would continue to be like this if she was not interrupted. At a certain moment, a hand suddenly reached out from behind Mugging and pressed a can of cold drink to Mugging's face. Ah! Mugging cried out in surprise and finally woke up. She subconsciously turned her head and looked behind her. There, a very familiar person appeared out of nowhere and smiled at Mugging. Noah? Mugging was surprised. Why are you here? To see you. Noah threw the cold drink in his hand to Mugging. However, no matter how I knocked, you didn't respond, so I just came in myself. Hearing this, Mugging was speechless as she took the cold drink. If she remembered correctly, she should have locked the door when she came in, right? In other words, did Noah pick the lock? Can you not always think of violence? Noah seemed to have seen through Mugging's thoughts and rolled his eyes. Do I look like someone who can pick a lock? So far, Noah had never picked a lock. Because for Noah, instead of going through the trouble of picking a lock, it was more useful to just kick it. Of course, if he made that kind of noise, Mugging should have noticed it no matter how dumb she was. She would not have been unaware until Noah came in, and even came to her side. Therefore, Mugging asked doubtfully, "Then how did you get in?" "Of course, I'll directly ask someone to unlock it," Noah said matter-of-factly. "This is a hotel, not your personal room. Can't you just ask a waiter to get the spare key?" Such a simple reason left Mugging dumbfounded. "Alright, don't look at me like that." Noah laughed. "I've brought a gift." With that said, Noah lifted a bag in his hand. "I just went shopping with Tina, Yinju, and Xiaoshi and bought some burgers." Noah waved the bag in his hand. "You should be hungry, right? Hamburger." Mugging blinked and said, "No, I'm not hungry." Before he could finish his sentence, a loud gulp sound came from Mugging's body. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched. Mugging's pretty face turned red. "Really?" Noah glanced at Mugging's stomach that made the sound and said with a half-smile, "Since you're not hungry, then forget it. I'll eat it myself." After that, Noah took out a burger from the bag. However, the burger, just as it was taken out of the bag, immediately disappeared with a swoosh sound. Noah looked at his empty hand with a speechless expression. In front of Noah, Mugging returned to her initial state. She leaned against the window and looked outside, her expression still unchanged. Of course, the feeling of sadness at the beginning was completely gone. After all, a girl eating a burger with puffed cheeks, no matter how you look at it, it is impossible for a girl to have a sad atmosphere. Noah was almost defeated by such a powerful girl. After shaking his head in annoyance, Noah also came to the window, leaned against the wall, and looked at the scenery outside with Mugging. As if chatting, he said this sentence. "What were you thinking just now?" Mugging silently swallowed the hamburger in his mouth, and continued to nibble on it as he spoke faintly. You and Ricky Cohen already knew that Mr. Ziheng was one of the top operatives of Wuxiang Association, right? Not really. Noah bitterly smiled. I also only knew about it on the day of the incident at the Self-Defense Forces camp. Ricky Cohen guessed it based on my words. But that day was the day you first met Mr. Ziheng. Mugging questioned. Doesn't that mean you knew from the beginning? But I was just guessing. Noah looked at Mugung. I didn't directly confirm that Mr. Ziheng was one of the top operatives of Wuxiang Association. Then why didn't you tell me? Muging's voice became a little low. Ricky Cohen must have told you not to tell me, right? I didn't want to tell you. Noah sighed. I just didn't want you to think too much. No matter what, the reason why Ziheng Xianyi was able to lure Noah out was because he had used Mugung. Before the international conference began, Mugung asked Mr. Ziheng to spy on Chiwu Zhongshuan, and gave Mr. Ziheng a chance to lure Noah out. If not, Mr. Ziheng wouldn't have used Muging's mouth to meet Noah in the coffee shop, and lure Noah into a trap. Therefore, strictly speaking, Mugung had helped Zihengxian a little. I don't want you to think that you almost killed me. Noah looked at Mugung. This idea, it shouldn't be a groundless fear, right? Mugung was speechless. After a while, Muging's expression became a little gloomy. Actually, I should have guessed that Mr. Ziheng is from Wuxiang Association, Mugging said in a low voice. Ever since I left Tokyo and moved to Fairyland, Mr. Ziheng didn't contact me often. It wasn't until a year ago when Fairyland's existence was completely exposed that Mr. Ziheng contacted me again, and very frequently. At first, I just thought that Mr. Ziheng didn't contact me because he didn't know where I was and thought that I might be on some mission. After all, I'm also a police officer. Mugging bit his lip. Now that I think about it, the reason why Mr. Ziheng didn't contact me again was because the Tentong family had been eradicated. He didn't need to use me to deal with the Tentong family, so he simply gave up on me. Ricky Cohen probably did the same. After Fairyland was exposed, Mr. Ziheng knew that I was the acting president of Fairyland, so he contacted me again. The reason is probably because he recognized the threat of Fairyland and wanted to get information from me and use me again. Mugging said self-deprecatingly. Mr. Ziheng even asked me to let him set up a company in Fairyland, specializing in transporting pi metal for Fairyland's use. However, at that time, I had already adopted the system you left behind. For the sake of the children, I couldn't easily let those who rejected the cursed child enter. So I used that as a reason to reject Mr. Ziheng's request. Mugging looked somewhat regretful. Now that I think about it, if I had opened the back door for Mr. Ziheng to set up a company in Fairyland because of our friendship, then that company would have become a channel for Wuxiang Association to infiltrate Fairyland, right? But you didn't do that. Noah looked straight at Mugung. If that's the case, then there's no need to blame yourself. I'm just thinking in this year, the police officers of our guild who were killed by the people of the Five Xiang Association. Is it possible that it was because of me? Muging's emotions seemed to have started to become agitated. Only the higher-ups of the guild would know the contents of the missions that required them to go abroad. Others wouldn't know at all, but Wuxiang Association could target those police officers who went abroad for missions. Could it be that I accidentally exposed their whereabouts to Mr. Ziheng? That's why I've been thinking hard here, thinking about how much information I've told Mr. Ziheng about Fairyland and the guild over the phone this year. Muging's voice began to have a slight sob. But I just can't remember, because in this year, I've talked to Mr. Ziheng a lot of times, and the number of words we've spoken is uncountable. I don't even know when I've leaked the information. That was why Mugung was in a daze. In this year, Mugung had indeed contacted Zihengxian a lot of times. If that was the case, it was only natural that Zihengxian would have gotten some information from him at some point in time. Chapter 2169. Seeing that Mugung seemed to be getting more and more agitated, Noah looked straight into the girl's eyes, his gaze unusually serious. Under the gaze of that pair of deep, dark eyes, Mugung was slightly startled, and then unbelievably calmed down. Then Noah spoke. I can understand how you feel, and I know that your considerations are not without reason. But you can't just dismiss it like that. Noah looked at Mugung and said, "There are so many police officers in our guild. Even the number of grade A police officers who can go abroad to carry out missions is close to 700 to 800. With this number of police officers, let's assume that half of them have taken on missions abroad. That's 300 to 400 police officers. You are the acting guild master of Fairyland, so you must be focused on a lot of work this year, like the development and construction of the city, the guild system and leadership, as well as the arrangement and placement of the cursed child, and so on." Noah smiled. "With so many things to do, I don't think you have the ability to pay attention to what kind of missions 300 to 400 police officers have taken on, where they are going, and even reveal them to Ziheng. But. Mugging seemed to want to say something, but was interrupted by Noah. "There are no buts," Noah said with an extremely firm tone. "Although I don't know the real situation, Xiaoshi has always been by your side to assist you. With Xiaoshi's supervision, no one in the guild would believe that you would use your precious time to reveal information to Ziheng, let alone me. Even if that's the case, I might have revealed other information." Mugging lowered her head and said softly, "And that information would cause some degree of damage to Fairyland. In other words, you must think that you are right just because you are wrong." Noah sighed. "Don't go into a dead end. You are my acting guild master. If you continue to be so depressed, how can I leave in peace?" "Leave?" Mugging suddenly raised her head and looked at Noah in shock. "You're leaving? Don't look like the sky is falling. I won't be gone for another 3 years." Noah shook his head, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Just treat it as I have a mission to carry out. I won't be gone for too long, at most a month." "A month?" Mugging finally breathed a sigh of relief. Of course, Mugging did not know that this month might never come. "If I can defeat the Eye, then no matter how long has passed, I can return in a month. And if I can't, all worlds would die with Noah, including Mugung, Elian, including those people whom Noah met in the worlds he had been to." Thinking of this, Noah took a deep breath, suppressed the complicated emotions in his heart, and patted Mugung on the shoulder. "You're no longer the president of the civilian police company that doesn't even have a business, but the acting guild master of Fairyland. Millions of people and children in Fairyland are waiting for you to take care of them," Noah said to Mugung. "So I won't allow you to wallow in meaningless self-blame. Don't forget you're the same." Mugung finally showed a somewhat spirited smile. "Fairyland has always been your possession, and I'm at best your acting guild master. Don't think of being a hands-off boss. If you don't return in a month, I'll start to usurp the throne and completely remove the word acting, so that you can only starve. It's fine." Noah curled his lips into a smile. "When that time comes, I'll go to the alien and let her take care of me." "That's an ambitious decision." Mugging was speechless but quickly reacted. "Speaking of the alien, does she know that you're planning to go on a mission?" "Not yet." Noah shrugged. "I plan to tell her after the Five Xiang Association is completely captured." "After the Five Xiang Association is completely captured." Mugging seemed to understand. "In other words, yeah." Noah turned around and looked out the window again. "After the Five Xiang Association matter is over, it's almost time for me to leave." Hearing that, Mugging looked straight at Noah, looking at Noah's expression as if he could go to a very distant place at any time. Mugging's eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. In the room, the initial sad atmosphere had completely disappeared. It was replaced by a burst of sadness. A burst of faint sadness. In the end, it seemed that even the world didn't intend to let Noah stay for too long. After the conversation between Noah and Mugung, another month passed, and the police from Fairy Tale sent to the other 4 areas of the Nippon Islands began to return. The results of this big operation were gratifying. In the Five Xiang Association, there was a top operative responsible for one area, lurking in Tokyo, Osaka, Sendai, Bodo, and Sapporo. Although the ultimate goal of the Five Xiang Association was world hegemony, their first goal was naturally to start from the 5 major areas of Nippon. After years of planning, out of the 5 top operatives, 2 of them became the rulers of their respective areas. One was Saiwemu Nikika, who became the ruler of the Osaka area. The other was called Tatsutsuji Tsukihiko, who became the ruler of the Sapporo area, which was the Hokkaido area. Among them, Saiwu Munehiko was killed by Noah. Tatsutsuji Tsukihiko tenaciously resisted, but in the end he couldn't resist the powerful fairy tale. He was first forced to step down and then arrested. As for the other three top operatives, other than Ziheng Senichi, who was executed by Mugung, the other two were also forced into a dead end by the police of Fairy Tail. One was killed, and the other was arrested, and there was no way for them to turn the situation around. In the end, even the whereabouts of Grunewald were discovered by Noah. He sent out Rentaro, Hina, Yenju, and 300 A-class police to arrest him, and engaged in a battle to the death with numerous mechanical soldiers. The result of the battle was that Fairy Tail, who was fully equipped with artificial artifacts, naturally couldn't lose. They destroyed Grunewald's stronghold, and captured the world's strongest brain alive, and sent him to the prison of Fairyland. In addition to the Fairy Tail's comprehensive operations in various areas, the spies of the Five Xiong Association were all dug out. It could be said that the current Five Xiong Association was almost completely finished. All the top operatives above 2 wings were captured. Many of the lower-level members of 1 wing escaped, but members of this level were all small fries. They were equivalent to followers and slaves in the Five Xiong Association. Even if they escaped, they couldn't do anything. After 2 months of operations, this organization that attempted to gain world hegemony was completely destroyed. Although because of this, the 5 areas of the Japanese archipelago were also in chaos, but in the end, they all calmed down. For example, in the Tokyo area, the Metropolitan Police Department and the self-defense forces that were paralyzed because of the Five Xiong Association had recovered their functions, and the Tokyo area gradually returned to normal. All the countries in the world knew that in these 2 months, an evil organization was completely annihilated by Noah's thunderous operations. However, this operation, in the eyes of all the countries in the world, was like a warning from Fairy Tail. Therefore, all the countries in the world hurriedly expedited the transfer of the cursed children to Fairyland to avoid being used as a pretext. As a result, the transfer of the cursed children from all over the world was finally completed in 2 months. Now, except for Fairyland, there were no more cursed children in the rest of the countries. Of course, without the cursed children, the police were also gone. Just like what Wei Ji said, the police had become the exclusive power of Fairyland. And under the influence of Fairyland, the world would begin to truly recognize it. Understand the meaning of the phrase, the police are the last hope of humanity. Until this moment, Noah's original dream was realized. From today onwards, the cursed children would no longer be ostracized and despised. At least in Fairyland, these children could definitely live a happy life. Noah had no more regrets in this world. In other words, it was time to leave. Chapter 2170. The night was getting darker and darker. In the holy residence, the Holy Son was sitting in front of his desk as usual, seriously reading the documents in his hand. For the Holy Son who longed for peace, working through the night was a very common thing. Recently, Tokyo had been in a lot of trouble because of the Five Xiong Association. The Holy Son naturally hoped to work harder to restore peace in Tokyo as soon as possible. Therefore, the Holy Son was constantly reading the documents, causing a lot of documents to pile up on his desk. However, even so, there were still a lot of documents waiting for the Holy Son to read, piling up on the other side of the desk. The Holy Son kept reading the documents like this, as if he didn't notice how late it was. In fact, these documents didn't need to be read by tomorrow, but it would take a few days of work to finish. With the Holy Son's current reading speed, there was no need to rush at all. It would be finished sooner or later. However, the Holy Son had no intention of stopping at all, and had been working hard all the time. At this rate, the Holy Son of Heaven wouldn't stop until it was late at night, right? If it was in the past, the Holy Son would definitely work hard until late at night without anyone looking after him. Unfortunately, for the past 2 months, there was someone who had been watching over this hard-working girl and supervising her when she went to bed. And now, this person came as usual, and before the Holy Sun noticed, he reached out from behind and took away the document he was reading. The Holy Sun was startled at first, but immediately understood what was going on, and the serious expression on his face began to relax. However, someone wouldn't let it go so easily. Bang! Along with the sound of knocking, the hand holding the document hit Elysian Son of Heaven's head hard. Ah! The Holy Sun couldn't help but cry out in pain, holding his head, and turned his eyes angrily, looking behind him. There, Noah was holding the document the Holy Sun was reading, staring at the Holy Sun, and said in a somewhat unfriendly tone, "How many times do I have to tell you? Are you still planning to work through the night?" The Holy Sun was speechless, and looked a little guilty. I just want to work a little longer." "A little while?" Noah looked at Elysian Son of Heaven with a thoughtful expression. "Is it really only for a short while?" "It really only took a short while." The Holy Son of Heaven's gaze began to shift. "The one you're holding, I plan to end it after reading it. Is that so?" Noah smiled and raised the document in his hand. "But I don't believe it." After he said that, Noah forcefully knocked the Holy Son of Heaven's head, causing the Holy Son of Heaven to let out a soft cry. The Holy Son of Heaven held his head and looked at Noah as if he had been wronged. If the people in the Tokyo area knew that the holy and pure Son of Heaven was actually acting like a little girl, they would definitely be scared out of their wits, right? On the other hand, Noah was already used to how the Holy Son behaved in private. When they first started dating, the Holy Son of Heaven wasn't like this. He was no longer as pure and holy in front of Noah. At most, he would blush from time to time. However, after 2 months of dating, although Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven were always busy during the day, one was busy with the matters in Fairyland, the other was busy with the matters in the Tokyo area, dutifully performing their duties as rulers. But when it came to night time, the two of them got along like lovers. Of course, the Holy Son of Heaven became more and more defenseless in front of Noah, and from time to time, he would act like a little girl, which could really make a lot of people's jaws drop to the ground. Looking at the Holy Son of Heaven's somewhat angry look, Noah felt that it was funny, but also felt that it was funny. After throwing the document in his hand on the desk, he reached out and pulled the Holy Son of Heaven up. Then, Noah sat on the Holy Son of Heaven's seat, and then pulled the Holy Son of Heaven into his arms, letting the ruler of Tokyo sit on his lap. The Holy Son of Heaven's face was slightly red, but he did not resist, and just twisted his body a few times as if he was not used to it. Padash! In the next second, a crisp sound came from behind the Holy Son of Heaven. "Ah!" The Holy Son of Heaven exclaimed again, and covered his butt, his face completely red. Noah smiled playfully, shrugged, and said so. "Don't move, let me hug you for a while." "I didn't say you can't hug me." The Holy Son of Heaven's face was red, and protested with a mosquito-like voice. "Why did you hit me there? Who asked you to be dishonest?" Noah looked at the Holy Son of Heaven with a smile, and said somewhat dangerously, "If you don't listen to me, I'll continue to hit you." The Holy Son of Heaven immediately covered his butt, and shook his head with a red face, which made Noah really have the urge to continue hitting him. Fortunately, Noah's moral integrity was not lacking, and the Holy Son of Heaven was lucky enough to escape this calamity. "You." The smile on Noah's face gradually disappeared, and he lovingly pinched the Holy Son of Heaven's little nose. "Next time you can't work too late, okay?" Hearing Noah's words, the redness on the Holy Son of Heaven's face faded bit by bit, and the girlish appearance that only Noah could see also began to disappear without a trace. After a moment of silence, the Holy Son of Heaven spoke softly. "Are you planning to leave?" "Yes." Noah did not hide and nodded. After all, the international conference is over, the problems of the world have been solved, the military forces in the Tokyo area are back in action, and even the Wuxiang Association has been completely captured. I should return to Fairyland. Hearing this, the Holy Son of Heaven nodded, and his expression did not change much. After all, the Holy Son of Heaven understood Noah's position very well. As the president of Fairyland, Noah could not always stay in the Tokyo area, and would always need to return to Fairyland. Today, as the largest independent country in the world, and also carrying the hope of all humans in the world, Fairyland's position in the world has long been extraordinary. Under such circumstances, with Noah's ability, he would definitely be able to lead Fairyland and bring a bright future for humans. This was the future that the Holy Son of Heaven hoped to see. The future that he had hoped to see before he became the Holy Son of Heaven. However, in the past, the Holy Son of Heaven had never found a way to walk towards this future, and while he hated his own powerlessness, he could only sigh. Now, the man he loved had realized the Holy Son of Heaven's dream, which made the Holy Son of Heaven overjoyed. To put it bluntly, the Holy Son of Heaven was proud of Noah. And as the ruler of a country, the Holy Son of Heaven naturally understood Noah as well. As such, the Holy Son of Heaven naturally could not bind Noah to a small Tokyo area. The stage of this man that she loved was not the Tokyo area, but the world. With that in mind, the Holy Son of Heaven's eyes still showed some reluctance. Seeing this clearly, Noah hugged the holy girl in his arms and said, "Don't worry, I will be back." The Holy Son of Heaven nodded, his eyes never leaving Noah. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow." Noah answered directly. "I will take a special plane back to Fairyland early in the morning." In other words, tomorrow, Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven would not have time to meet. Farewell tonight. The Holy Son of Heaven clenched his hands as he thought of this. Looking at Noah's face, his heart began to beat faster. The Holy Son of Heaven's face blushed again as he spoke in a low voice. "Do you still remember what I said to you when you left 3 years ago?" 3 years ago? Noah was confused. Which one? That one. The Holy Son of Heaven's voice became lower and lower as his face became redder and redder. "My confidants in the sanctuary have been urging me to give birth to a child as soon as possible." "This one?" Noah was enlightened. "Of course I remember this." Before he could finish, Noah's face froze as he looked at the Holy Son of Heaven in shock. Then Noah smiled. There was really no more direct hint than this. The Holy Son of Heaven screamed for the umpteenth time. But this time, it was Noah who carried the Holy Son of Heaven in a princess carry and walked towards the bed. The Holy Son of Heaven's face became redder than ever as he buried his head in Noah's arms. Not long after, a pure white wedding dress floated to the ground. The night gradually blurred. Chapter 2171. The next morning. Warm sunlight shone in through the window and onto the room, reflecting a hazy glow. Noah slowly put on his coat. After tidying up his clothes, he picked up the white wedding dress that had fallen on the ground and placed it on the hanger at the side. After doing all this, Noah turned his head and looked forward. Phew! The rhythmic sound of breathing could be heard. Under the blankets, one could vaguely see her exquisite collarbone and white, smooth skin. Her pretty face was not as sacred as it used to be. Instead, it was slightly flushed, making her look very attractive. On the spacious bed, the Holy Son of Heaven was lying under the blanket. Only her white shoulders were exposed. She was sleeping very peacefully. Looking at the adorable girl's naivety, Noah's heart was filled with pity. Noah reached out his hand and gently smoothed the hair of the holy and alluring girl. Then he kissed the Holy Son of Heaven's forehead and murmured in a low voice as if he was sleep-talking. "Wait for me to come back." After that, Noah looked deeply at the Holy Son of Heaven, then turned around and walked towards the door. Gotcha! With a slight creak, Noah opened the door. Bang! With the soft sound of the door closing, Noah disappeared from this space. The whole room returned to silence, but the warm atmosphere in the air did not dissipate. Ugh! After an unknown amount of time, the Holy Son of Heaven slowly woke up with a soft moan. The Holy Son of Heaven first looked around in a daze, then suddenly woke up and subconsciously got up. A corner of the blanket fell from the Holy Son of Heaven's body, exposing the Holy Son of Heaven's extremely curvaceous and seductive back. Just like that, the young girl held onto the blanket, protecting the front of her body, while her gaze swept around her surroundings. She did not find the figure that she could see clearly even in her dreams. The Holy Son of Heaven seemed to understand something and muttered. Did he leave? The Holy Son of Heaven looked at the clothes on the hanger, and felt the warmth and smell of the man in love. The Holy Son of Heaven took a deep breath and looked out of the window and muttered to herself, "Have a safe journey, my beloved." After coming out of the holy residence, Noah turned his head and looked in the direction of a window as if he had been enlightened. Noah glanced at that place with some reluctance, after which he did not linger any longer and directly walked forward. In front of the holy residence, a luxurious limousine seemed to have been waiting for a long time. When Noah walked up, the driver immediately got down from the driver's seat and opened the door facing the holy residence. Noah got in the car and drove forward with the luxurious limousine. The scenery outside the window continued to pass by. After a while, the holy residence was completely out of sight. However, Noah would never forget. There, a person was waiting for him. "This time I will not let you wait for 3 years." This sentence naturally came out of Noah's mouth. Under such circumstances, the limousine gradually went away and drove along the road to the end of the endless road. The private plane to Fairyland was not in the airport but in another area. After all, the police belonging to Fairy Tale also needed to follow Noah and his group back to Fairyland and the guild. A total of nearly 2,000 people naturally could not enter the airport together. Otherwise it would definitely cause a commotion. Besides, when the police officers from Fairy Tale came to the Tokyo area, they took a military helicopter instead of a regular plane. Naturally, they wouldn't be waiting at the airport. For the sake of these military helicopters, the Holy Son of Heaven had specially cleared out a large area in the outer region for the use of Fairy Tale. Usually, there were police from Fairy Tale stationed here, so there was no need to worry about safety. In the limousine, Noah came directly to the airport. Here, pairs of police had already gathered and were chatting in the vast area. Mugung, Rintaro, Hina, Xiashur, and Yenju were also present. Behind the police, there were hundreds of military helicopters parked there. It was a spectacular sight. "The president is here." At a certain moment, a sharp-eyed child called out, causing everyone present to instantly quiet down and turn their gazes towards the direction of the voice. Noah slowly made his way over to them, only to receive peculiar looks from Mugung, Rintaro, Hina, Yenju, and Xiashur. Noah stopped and asked suspiciously, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Hearing that, Mugung and his group exchanged glances before looking at Noah again. "Brother," Hina said softly, "you didn't go back to the hotel yesterday." Noah's expression froze. Only then did Noah realize a very serious problem. Mugung and his group all knew that every night, Noah would go to the sage residence to meet the sage child. However, last night, Noah did not return to the hotel at all. In this situation, as long as one's EQ was not shockingly low, they would most likely understand what was going on. Therefore, Noah's expression became extremely unnatural. Looking at Noah's extremely unnatural expression, everyone seemed to have confirmed their guesses, and their expressions changed one by one. "I didn't expect our president to be such a beast." Mugung mocked with a fake smile. "Brother, did you betray me in the end?" Hina had a sad expression. "As expected of the president, you actually hooked up with the sage child." Yenju said vulgar words that normal girls and children would not say. "I misjudged you, president." Xiashur had a look of reproach. Under the situation where all the girls were complaining, only Rentaro could not help but give Noah a thumbs up. However, this thumbs up attracted the hatred of all the girls. Mugung, Hina, Yenju, and Xiashur all looked at Rentaro with murderous gazes. Rentaro's body trembled, and he unwillingly withdrew his thumbs. He looked up at the sky with an expression that said, "I don't know anything." What a disloyal bastard. Noah cursed in his heart and then laughed dryly. "Well, I had some things to do last night." "Oh." Mugung narrowed his eyes. Some things to do. Some things to do. Hina, Yenju, and Xiashur also narrowed their eyes and stared at Noah as if they were looking at a criminal. Being stared at by a group of girls, the corners of Noah's mouth twitched. Stare. The girls continued to stare at Noah. This time, even Noah felt a lot of pressure. In the end, Noah could only surrender and say, "Look at me." "I say, why are you looking at me like this? What are you planning to do?" The girls snorted arrogantly and turned their heads away, ignoring Noah completely. All right. Mugging immediately turned around and spoke to all the police officers from Fairy Tale. Our president has arrived. Everyone, let's board the plane. Yes. All the police officers responded in unison. Then, they split up and boarded the military helicopters in an orderly manner. Hina, Xiashi, Yanju, Mugging said. We'll go as well. Okay. Hina, Xiashi, and Yanju nodded in unison without any objections. Then, the four girls did not even look at Noah as they walked toward a helicopter not far away. Noah was speechless as he watched the four girls walk away as if there was no one else around. Ryotaro didn't leave. He remained where he was and patted Noah's shoulder with emotion as he said this. It's okay, I'll stay with you. Noah glanced at Ryotaro and sighed. Without saying anything, he walked away. Ryotaro was stunned. When he finally came to his senses, Ryotaro felt like his lungs were about to explode. I'm staying with you out of the kindness of my heart. Why are you reacting like that? Amidst the commotion, the police officers from Fairy Tale all boarded the military helicopters. Then, the propellers of the military helicopters began to spin rapidly, creating a strong gust of wind as they flew into the distance. Chapter 2172. Fairyland was located not far from the Tokyo area. After all, Noah had lived in Tokyo before, and the location he chose to build Fairyland would not be too far away. At the very least, if the people of Fairyland wanted to go to Tokyo, they could go back and forth several times in a day. Of course, that was if they took a plane. Noah and his party took a military helicopter. Therefore, after about 3 hours, the bustling fortress city slowly appeared before everyone's eyes in the cabin. Through the helicopter's window, Noah, who saw Fairyland from above, once again recognized the prosperity of the city. The towering city wall made of rhenium metal surrounded the entire city, leaving only a huge city gate at the front of the city. Inside the city, there were many tall buildings, like a steel hedgehog. And at the very center of the city, a towering building that looked as if it could reach the clouds stood there. Looking at the unbelievable city, even Noah was a little doubtful about how the city was built in just 3 short years. With that in mind, Noah suddenly spoke. There should be teaching facilities in Fairyland, right? Noah's words left Mugging, Hina, Xiashi, Yanju and Rintaro slightly startled. Of course there is. Mugging replied with some doubt. Normally, the cursed child is only around 10 years old, and the oldest is no more than 14 years old. Children at this age should be obedient in school, so they have to focus on education. Isn't this the philosophy that you left behind? That's true. Noah shook his head with a smile, and could not help feeling a little melancholy. 3 years ago, when we were in Tokyo, there were only 1 or 2 teaching facilities in the guild. But now there should be a lot, right? According to recent statistics, there are a total of 1,325 teaching facilities that are still in operation, Xiashi said. After all, the cursed children are all at the age where they should go to school, and Fairyland gathers the cursed children from all over the world. Depending on the situation, there should be more construction in the future. Would you like to take a look at the school, Guildmaster? Yanju raised her hand excitedly. Then do you want to go to my school to take a look? Your school? Noah asked in surprise. Are you in school? Because going to school is very interesting, Yanju said matter-of-factly. Although I rarely have the chance to go to school because I have to travel all over the world with Rintaro, I've always cherished my time in school. Of the 3 of us, only Yanju still insists on going to school, Tina explained. Because I've always been sleepy during the day, and because I'm usually busy with my tasks, I gave up. Miss Xiashi needs to assist Miss Mugging, so she also doesn't go to school. But with Miss Xiaxi's knowledge, she should have long surpassed the level of a university. He was indeed worthy of being called a think tank. At the age of 13, he had already finished all the university courses. He was even more of a straight-A student than a straight-A student. How is it? Does guild leader want to visit my school? Yanju asked expectantly. I can introduce you to my friends. Yanju's friend? Noah couldn't help but ponder for a moment before smiling. Let's go to Yenju's school first. Yenju's school was not very far from the office building of Fairy Tale. After alighting from the helicopter, Noah, Rintaro, Mugung, Hina, Xiashur, and Yenju went straight to the school. Of course, as the guild leader of Fairyland, Noah was immediately surrounded by all the children as soon as he entered the school. Guild leader, guild leader, guild leader, guild leader, guild leader, guild leader, guild leader. The children surrounded Noah one by one, jumping up and down and shouting non-stop, which made Noah laugh bitterly. You guys. Yenju stepped forward and separated everyone. She stood in front of Noah with her hands on her hips, looking very arrogant. Don't harass the guild leader. Can't you see that the guild leader is troubled? Yenju's words immediately attracted the protests of the children. Undoubtedly, Yenju-chan wants to monopolize the guild leader. That's right. What's wrong with sharing some with us? Stingy. I'm not stingy, Yenju said fiercely. I brought the guild leader here to have fun. If the guild leader is scared away by you and never comes back, what should we do? However, the group of children did not pay any attention to Yenju and spoke one after another. The guild leader never comes here in the first place. It's rare for him to come here. I don't even know if he'll come again. Yenju must want to monopolize the guild leader. She'll definitely make the guild leader hate her. How can the guild leader hate me? Yenju exploded. I'm different from you. Let me tell you, not only was I taught by the guild leader in school, but the guild leader also told me stories. Stories. All the children were stunned for a moment. Then they showed an interested expression and shouted at Noah. Guild leader, tell us a story too. Yeah. We want to hear stories. The group of children ignored Yenju and pushed the screaming Yenju out of the crowd. Once again, they surrounded Noah and jumped up and down shouting. Looking at the children around him, looking at the curiosity in their scarlet eyes, Noah was silent for a while, then smiled. Do you know why our guild is called Fairy Tale? This sentence caused the group of children to look at each other in dismay. Then, they revealed curious expressions and started to clamor again. Why? Why is the guild called Fairy Tale? Amidst the excited and curious voices of the children, Noah smiled. Actually, whether fairies have tails or even exist, no one knows. Noah touched the head of the child closest to him. Even I don't know. Hearing this, the group of children was instantly shocked. In the hearts of these children, Noah was the greatest person, and no one could compare. Without Noah, Fairyland would not exist. Without Fairyland, the cursed children would all be treated inhumanely. It was all thanks to Noah that they could have the life they had now. Therefore, in the hearts of the children, Noah had long been omnipotent. Now Noah actually said such a thing, which naturally surprised the children. Even the guild master doesn't know if fairies have tails. Doesn't that mean that fairies are more powerful than the guild master? Has the guild master never seen a fairy before? Haven't you? Under the barrage of questions from the group of children, Noah smiled without saying a word. Instead of answering, he only said this sentence. Does anyone want to know if fairies have tails? Yes. The children answered in unison without hesitation. If that's the case, then go look for it yourselves. Noah suddenly smiled. When you find fairies and solve the riddle that even I couldn't solve, then all of you will become more powerful than me. But no matter what, all of you must remember one thing. No matter where you go, no matter what difficulties you encounter, you must never give up hope. As long as you believe in hope, fairies will appear by your side. And Fairyland will always be your home. Noah's words made the children's eyes light up one after another, flashing with a dazzling brilliance. They believed that those words would become an indelible brand, engraved in the depths of the children's hearts. No matter what happened in the future, these children would always carry such a dream in their hearts. That was to chase fairies, to chase hope. As long as they could accomplish that, then they could surpass the idols that everyone worshipped and looked forward to. When that time comes, whether fairies have tails or not would no longer matter. Because these children would surely discover it, right? The fairies that could protect them would always be by their side. And that was Fairyland. In the direction of the door, Mugung, Hina, Xiashi, Yanju, and Ryutaro all showed a warm smile when they saw this. Chapter 2173. After spending the whole morning in Yanju's school, Noah slowly left amidst the reluctant farewells of the children. However, Noah did not directly return to Fairy Tale. Instead, as if something had piqued his interest, he began to wander around the entire fairy town accompanied by Mugung, Hina, Xiashi, Yanju, and Rintaro. Sometimes he would tour around some very creative buildings. Sometimes he would wander around some very meaningful places. Sometimes he would ride in a limousine on the roads. Sometimes he would play with children on the side of the road. Thus, Noah would sometimes walk and sometimes use transportation, aimlessly heading to one place after another. It was as if he wanted to visit the entirety of Fairyland and get to know everyone, going to and fro without getting tired of it, enjoying himself immensely. When he was hungry, he would talk to the owners of the stalls and ask them to give him some food to fill his stomach. When he was thirsty, he would find a place and ask for some drinks from others. When he was in the mood, he would help out with the household chores. When his hands were itchy, he would fight with some policemen in the gym and training ground, and they were evenly matched. On this day, Noah seemed to have completely become a tourist and a child, either running around or being willful and playful. These performances made Mugging and the others who had been accompanying Noah dumbfounded. After all, in the eyes of Mugging and the others, although Noah was easy to talk to, once he encountered a problem, his performance was better than anyone else. 3 years ago, without any power or influence, Noah was able to force the celestial Tong family to step down by himself. Not long ago, when faced with difficulties from countries all over the world, Noah was also able to turn misfortune into blessings. Not only did he not give the countries all over the world a chance to make trouble, he even turned the tables and made all the countries suffer. In addition, he once single-handedly took care of the Stage V protozoa, annihilating an army of thousands of protozoa with one move. Even a large number of mechanical soldiers of the Wuxiang Association were cleanly defeated. He had unimaginable power. These deeds made everyone clearly aware. Undoubtedly, they recognized Noah's ability. Powerful, mysterious, excellent, tyrannical. These people were the leader of Fairy Tale in the eyes of the world Noah Dole. Even Mugung and the others saw Noah in this way. But today, Noah overturned everyone's impression of him. Mugung, Hina, Xiashi, Yanju, and Rintaro were all very surprised to see this. However, no one said anything about this. That was because they all knew why Noah was acting like this. And so Mugung, Hina, Xiashi, Yanju, and Rintaro accompanied Noah the entire time. They didn't urge Noah to return to Fairy Tale. In fact, they even put down all of their burdens to play with Noah. They played until the evening. Even Mugung, Hina, Xiashi, Yanju, and Rintaro were exhausted after playing for an entire afternoon. Apart from exhaustion, everyone also felt a sense of novelty. It was as if their mood had suddenly become cheerful, or as if all the depression in their hearts had been vented. They felt very happy. As a high-ranking member of Fairy Tale, other than Yanju who would occasionally enjoy the life of a child, how could the rest of them have any form of entertainment on a daily basis? But today, while playing with Noah, the group went to many places. There was a skating rink. There was an amusement park. There was a gymnasium. There was a zoo. There was everything, and they played with many of the entertainment facilities in Fairyland. It was as if all of their entertainment time had been concentrated on today. The group really had a lot of fun. If it was any other place, they definitely wouldn't be able to have so much fun, right? After all, in Fairyland, they were all famous people, not much different from popular idols. Once they went out on the streets, they would definitely be surrounded. However, in Fairyland, the people who surrounded Noah's group were all children. Therefore, Noah's group was naturally happy to play with the children. They played with the children almost everywhere they went, and it felt like they were having fun with the people. It was not until the evening that the unrestrained fun finally came to an end. However, the group still did not return to Fairy Tale. This time, however, it was not Noah who wanted to play around on a whim. Instead, Mugging and the others pulled Noah into a KTV and had a gathering. Cheers! Inside a KTV suite, Noah, Mugino, Rintaro, Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju all raised the glasses in their hands and clinked them in unison, causing the crisp sound to echo throughout the room. At the same time, a joyous atmosphere filled the air, causing everyone's faces to be filled with smiles. Then, the group chose to drink the drinks in their hands at the same time. Phew! Yenju exclaimed happily. So comfortable. After running around all day, I finally have something to drink. Hina also had a comfortable expression. I've been thirsty for a long time. The drinks in this shop are all sold in direct cooperation with famous manufacturers, so there's a fresh feeling in there. Xiaoshi showed off his genius halo. I heard that the drinks here are much better than other places, and it's a favorite of the young people. Is that so? Yenju's eyes lit up, and she spoke without hesitation. I want to drink. No, Ryutaru retorted with a single sentence. Minors are not allowed to drink. Sigh. Yenju sighed in dissatisfaction. How can you do that? Riki-kun is right. Mugging agreed. You're not old enough to drink yet, so you're not allowed to drink. Hearing that, not only did Yenju lower her head dejectedly, but even Hina and Xiaoshi, who were eager to try, were disappointed. Although the three children had different personalities as children, their curiosity was particularly strong, especially when it came to things like alcohol. Everyone knew that only adults could drink, so most children would want to try it out of curiosity. However, alcohol was not a good thing for children. Thus Noah also threatened. If you three girls dare to drink secretly, you'll get ulcers on your mouth. Ulcers. Hina and Yenju immediately covered their mouths. Liar, Xiaoshi said calmly. Alcohol doesn't cause ulcers, and even if it does, it should be in the stomach, not the mouth, right? That's not necessarily the case. Noah smiled as if it was true. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. Seeing Noah's meaningful smile, Xiaoshi hesitated. Could it be that the knowledge he learned was wrong? Alright, stop scaring my Xiaoshi. Mugging rolled her eyes at Noah. No matter how smart she is, she's still just a child. Do you want her to be so conflicted that she can't sleep at night? Under normal circumstances, someone who can't sleep because of conflict shouldn't appear in a child, Ryutaru said bluntly. If she really is a child, then she'll sleep more happily than anyone else. Ryutaru's words caused 3 feet to stomp on him, causing him to cry out in pain. Humph. Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju harumphed coldly, leaving Ryutaru with the back of their heads, so he didn't dare to say anything. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but feel a little amused. Mugging sat next to Noah. Looking at Noah's face, Mugging spoke in a low voice. Now you can relax a little, right? Don't worry. Noah was stunned. I know that you must be planning to do something extremely important. Otherwise, you wouldn't have shown such an expression in the hotel, and you wouldn't have acted so strangely today. Mugging said, looking straight into Noah's eyes. I just want to tell you that no matter what you're planning to do, don't forget that the reason all the residents of Fairyland are laughing like they are today is because of you. Including me, that's the same. Mugging showed a beautiful smile. So you must remember to come back. Mugging's words made Noah smile. Of course. That you're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.